Hi, everyone. Welcome to Movieflex Double Features, the only podcast where everything's made up and the plots don't matter. I'm one of your hosts, Estebs, here as always with your other host, Matt, aka the Posting Pro. Matt, how's it going?
Yo, it's going good. How are you guys?
Movies, baby.
Hell yeah,
That's
dude.
how I am. Oh, yeah,
Movies.
and I should also say before we get into it, we're also joined again by our special guest. We know him from the group chat. You know him from last week's episode. He's our friend. He's very cool. It's Chase, aka Thought Haver. How's it going, Chase?
I'm doing good. I gotta say, I was hoping that my appearances on these shows would really pump up my Twitter account. So listeners, please, I gotta get those follows, okay?
Yeah, I think I actually lost 9 followers the week after we started the podcast because I was like tweeting about like, hey, everyone listen to this podcast, and then like after the first week, I was down to like 10 followers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nobody wants to hear about the podcast, but guys, you gotta listen to it.
Listen to
Someone's
the
listening
pod.
to it.
Guys. The only correct movie pod on the internet. Let me just tell you that right now.
Like, people were always like, "Oh, what's the gimmick gonna be?" And I'm like, the gimmick's gonna be me." You know what I'm saying? Like I feel like our views are correct. There's no one else with the same views. Like I said, plots, who needs them? You know, bullshit. Get that out of here. I don't care. Plot holes. I never notice plot holes because I'm never looking for them because I'm not that kind of person. You know what I'm
It's
saying?
vibes, baby. It's vibes.
Yeah.
It's art. You know.
Yeah, and where else in the world can you get 3 guys in their 20s talking about Twin Peaks? It's nowhere else that people can get this.
Yeah, I'm 29. Okay, I'm just kidding. I'm 34 actually. So, but you need the old guy when you're talking Twin Peaks because you need him to be like, oh yeah, I remember when I was there. I was 2 when Twin Peaks came out actually.
You remember when you were in Twin Peaks itself?
Yeah, no, I grew up in Twin Peaks. No, I
Yeah.
didn't. My cousin did though. He no, just kidding. So yeah. Actually, before we get into this week, we're talking Lynch, of course, Twin Peaks specifically. But I wanted to see if you guys had any like non-Lynch, non-pod like movies or anything that you've been watching that you want to recommend. Like me, for instance, I this weekend I went on a mini like Philip Seymour Hoffman like marathon. And I started with his most fucked up movie, which is Todd Solance's Happiness. Have you guys seen? Have you seen that one?
I saw part of that movie on TV when I was at like 10 years old. I don't know why it was on TV, but I only saw the part where the pedophile dad is like talking to his son about how he's a pedophile, and I was
Yeah.
like, I was like 10 years old, and I understood what the scene was about, and I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, it's a fucked up movie.
As a 10-year-old, you understand what that scene was about. Oof, we might need to do some hypnosis therapy or
Cut that,
something.
cut that.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a really fucked up movie. I know that because not only is it not streaming anywhere, but I had to watch it on a website called fedupmovies.com. Thank you. Thank you to the film archivist over at fedupmovies.com. Really saving cinema there.
What if it was Martin Scorsese who was like the archivist there?
Yeah,
He's like,
he's
I've got a
like,
really great piece of cinema for you. It's called Happiness.
he finances fwmovies.com so people can watch like Guinea Pig and August Underground and all that fucked up like
Serbian
that's all
film.
like yeah, all that like faux snuff film shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, I watched Todd Solance's Happiness, which again, yeah, like Philip Seymour Hoffman doesn't play the pedophile, but he plays a very fucked up guy in a different way. And like, of course, yeah, there's the pedo part, and it's really intense, and it's like kind of sometimes played for laughs almost. Like, yeah, I mean, it's a movie about people wanting to find happiness, but then like, so I watched that movie and it's really good, and then I followed it up with Pirate Radio, aka The Boat That Rocked, which I don't know if you guys remember, but it's from like 2011. It's a movie about like pirate radio stations in Britain in the 60s, just like the total opposite of Happiness. Just like this, it's directed by the guy who directed Love Actually, Richard Curtis or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and it's a really shitty movie, and it's a really fucked up double feature, and
Yeah, that's a cursed double feature, man.
left me feeling, because the thing is, I want to finish Philip Seymour Hoffman's like filmography. I want to be 100% on all of his movies, and I've seen like the majority of them. But
my girlfriend told me that he was in the Hunger Games, which I didn't know.
Yes, he is in the Hunger Games.
He was in the second one or something.
Yeah, I've only seen the first one, but he's in the second and third.
Yeah, and then he died before they finished the part 2 of the third one. So there's a part where Woody Harrelson's like, I've got a letter from him, by the way. And he reads out like what that character says in the book, because he's, he didn't film that scene. So,
well, at least they didn't do a CGI of him, because that would have been fucked up.
Yeah, and that CGI technology at the time was, it was a lot. When you watch,
if they made it today, they probably would have.
Oh, for sure, dude, for sure. I'm shocked they haven't like re-released it with the CGI. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that's my not recommends. Unless you're a Philip Seymour Hoffman completionist. I like Happiness is a legitimately good movie, but it's not for like the weak of heart. I tried watching it before, and I was like, man, this shit's fucked up. Like, and then but I finished it, and yeah, it's. If you've ever seen like Little Children, it's like Little Children vibes. Got like one of the same actresses in it. Yeah. No, those are my recommendations. Or not recommendations. What about you, Chase?
My recommendations. I've done some sacrilege. I haven't watched really many movies apart from our double feature, because I've been watching Better Call Saul because the new season came onto Netflix.
Oh,
so shit. Yeah, that's a great show, but I do feel ashamed, appropriately ashamed for not watching movies this week. So I'm sorry, guys.
It's all good. Actually, I watched another Philip Seymour Hoffman movie, a Most Wanted Man, and it stars one of the head German engineer from like season 3, I think, or 2 maybe.
Yeah. I actually. Oh wait. I did watch a movie. I watched Inglourious Bastards with my girlfriend, and speaking of that German engineer, he's one of the Nazis. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's in the last movie I just watched, actually. Yeah, Serious Man. He plays a German, not a Nazi, just a guy who's really into national security. Totally different thing. What about you, Matt?
Yeah. So I went a little crazy in between Twin Peaks watches because I've been sick all week, so no gym for me. But I watched a couple of Cronenbergs. I watched Scanners. So I put the post up on Twitter. I was asking people, and everyone came out of the woodwork and said, you need to see Videodrome. Got a couple of
Long Live the New Flesh.
Yeah, got a couple of History of Violences in there. So I was like, all right, I'll do Scanners. So I was like, let me go kind of like not to his original film, but like one that's kind of popular. So I watched Scanners. I really liked it. Then I watched Videodrome. That was like a double feature I did. Really liked Videodrome a lot. And then afterwards, I watched Existence, which is a film that makes The Matrix look like Child's Play, No, not really.
That's a quote from the box. That's so fucking funny, dude.
It's a very stupid comparison.
I actually haven't seen Existence. Is it good?
It's all right. It's no Videodrome. It's no Scanners, but yeah, I like it. I've said that I think Cronenberg makes these movies, these little fucked up violent movies about what if media that's violent and fucked up makes you violent and or fucked up. So he makes kind of these like, I don't know, meta commentary movies. And so cause he's got that new movie coming out soon. So I wanted to get caught up on at least a couple of them. And I'm going to watch History of Violence probably tomorrow and Eastern Promises sometime. But besides that, I've been catching up. I finally finished most of. I'm not gonna go and watch Crime Wave. Fuck that. But I finished most of Sam Raimi's filmography,
Mm.
and I have to say, like, so I don't like a simple. I'm completely against the grain on this one. I don't like A Simple Plan, but I do have to say, The Gift is my favorite Raimi film. It's the one that like most people don't like because it's very like
Yeah.
late '90s, kind of like indie prestige movies, right? But I think that's kind of like a novel concept now.
Mhm.
There is a guy who plays up a mentally challenged person a little too much in the movie. But it's about a psychic who Kate Blanchett with Keanu Reeves in it. He plays a racist guy. It's pretty good. It's about
Nice.
a psychic who kind of helps solve a murder. And yeah, so The Gift, and then I finished Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell,
Mm.
which I can't recommend enough. Like when I
Hell
was
yeah,
watching
dude.
it like there were parts of it I was like cringing, like so I was like, oh, like just not that it was like scary or like, but it was like cringy what I was seeing, like
Yeah.
not in a good way. So I was like kind of skipping those parts just a little bit. But I sat through it. I watched it all. That movie is so fucking mean, and I love it. I'm like, we need more movies that are mean as shit because that movie is so fucking mean. Like, it's
Yeah.
just angry and people angry at each other and like fucked up stuff happening to people and all this stuff. And I'm like, we need more of this, like movies that aren't afraid to be just mean as shit.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal watch. I'm glad you like that one, and I'm glad you like Videodrome because those are like two of my favorites. And yeah, Drag Me to Hell is like one of my favorite Raimis. I've heard people say it's like about it's a metaphor for like an eating disorder. There's a lot of like imagery where she's like puking and stuff. And I don't know, but
Yeah, it's
yeah,
also
I think
like
it just works as just like a regular horror movie.
it's also doesn't paint the gypsies in a good light. I don't think you're allowed to say the Romani people. It doesn't paint them in a good light.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's what I've been watching.
Well, hey, that's just an old trope, the curse of the gypsy. That's just something to get the plot going, Classic inciting incident. More of a literary trope than like racism, I would say,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, as
she's
far
pretty
as
much
like
like a caricature, I think too. Like I think yeah, that kind of helps because she's so much like her and like the Latino characters in that movie are so much like caricatured. It's like over
Yeah.
the top to where it's like there's nobody in existence that's ever acted like this, which I think is part of the charm of the movie.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
Raimi, it's a cartoon.
I mean, gypsy curses in movies, as far as I'm concerned, Holes is number one.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true.
There's some good ones. I guess technically Big, it's Big is I would count as a gypsy curse because like the machine that makes him big is
Oh
like a
yeah.
kind of a gypsy sort of like
Is Thinner,
caricature.
is that a gypsy curse?
Yeah, Thinner's a gypsy curse. That's the classic gypsy curse
I
movie.
never thought about how many movies have gypsy curses.
So
Well, it's
many,
a
dude.
lot.
Yeah, so many.
I'm sure there's all kinds of like books and like Huck
Oh,
Finn
dude.
and shit that we're not even aware of. That's like,
Well, the gypsies are the ones that have the knowledge of the werewolf too, and like
yeah,
Wolfman and all the Wolfman movies. They're like, we got to go to the gypsies for help. They know about curses.
yeah,
And
they know
shit.
about fucked up shit like that. Well, that's a great actually segue into this week's double feature. Let's just get right into it. This week we're doing Lynch, specifically, like I said, Twin Peaks. We're gonna talk about it all. I picked Fire Walk with Me in episode 8 because they were the closest to like two movies that I could find within the Twin Peaks universe. Obviously, Fire Walk with Me is a movie. It's the only movie that of like the whole franchise or whatever. And then episode 8 of The Return specifically, I've seen it talked about and discussed so much as like its own thing, and like this like it works, I think, well as like a piece of art, like separate from Twin Peaks totally. Like I think you could watch it and not know what it's about and still be like, wow, that was really cool. And yeah, I feel like, if my thing is like if I go to the New Beverly or Draft House and like this was like something that I programmed, would I have a good time? And yeah, like I said, it's about 3 hours total in content time. So yeah, Fire Walk with Me, episode 8 of The Return. I guess maybe we should talk a little bit about like our history with David Lynch. Like me personally, it's funny. Like I've known who he was like for as long as I can remember because he's like so famous, especially in the '90s. Like people just knew who David Lynch was, even though his movies weren't super mainstream. He himself was like a very like popular guy. I think even to this day, like people who maybe don't watch Twin Peaks or even people who've like never seen like a David Lynch movie can still kind of like maybe somewhat accurately like describe what Lynchian is. Like they might not correctly identify it, but they can probably like kind of generally identify it, I think. But yeah, but then like I didn't even like I started watching his movies in college, and honestly, it wasn't until a couple years ago that like I had somebody sit me down and be like, you have to like watch Twin Peaks because it's not what you think it is. Like I think that's like a big thing with Lynch is like you have to have somebody tell you like it's not what you think it is. Like no one knows what they're talking about if they're trying to explain it, but it's like it's about something and it's hard to explain what it is, but you just have
You
to
just
see
gotta
it for
watch it,
yourself.
man. Yeah.
Yeah. And like I said, I just never had anyone tell me to do that until like very recently. And of course, I love it. But yeah, I'm not claiming to be an expert. Like much like the Tracy Morgan character Brian Fellows, I am merely a enthusiastic young man with a 6th grade education. Just I just wanted an excuse to talk about Lynch, basically. And I thought this would be like a great like entree into his world, Twin Peaks. Talk about SEO. People love it. It's always popular. Maybe not so much now because it's like on Paramount Plus for some inexplicable reason. I have no idea why. It's kind of insane. But yeah, what about you guys? How did you guys get into Lynch and what's your
Yeah.
history?
Well, so for me, my first exposure to Lynch was actually I must have been like 12 years old. I had a Comcast on demand, and I was home alone, and I was going through all the movies, and there was this I can't remember what it's called, but there's this like weird, fucked up channel on demand for Comcast where it had like old like it had like old like drug videos where it's like from the 50s or 60s where it's like warning kids about drugs, like satanic panic videos, and they also had full feature films. And so I saw Eraserhead on there, and I was like, what is this? And so I watched, I don't think I watched the whole thing. I was like kind of skipping through it, and it scared the shit out of me because I was, like 12 years old. And but I remember skipping to the end and seeing the fetus or whatever it is when the head grows to like the size of the entire room, and I remember turning it off, and I was like, what the fuck is this?
It's
and
crazy
so,
that even now they can't like they can't just tell us what that fetus was. It's like
I don't.
it could have maybe been this. Like
People think it's like a pig fetus or like maybe chicken entrails or something they made it out of, but yeah. And then so that I saw Eraserhead when I was like 12, and then later in high school I got exposed to Twin Peaks, which was my entry into David Lynch, and I think it's a really good entry for people who are new to his stuff because it has this kind of soap opera format, and then there's just a little bit of surrealism sprinkled into each episode. But as it goes along, it starts mounting and mounting, and if you're like me, then you kind of get bored of the soap opera stuff, and you're like, all right, where's the red room scenes? Where's the dream sequences? Where's all the stuff like that?
Yeah.
And then, I think the next thing I watched was Mulholland Drive, and then since then, for a few years, Mulholland Drive was my favorite movie. Now it's probably second or third, but it's fantastic. And then I've seen pretty much all of his stuff, except for The Straight Story, which I still haven't seen. I really have to watch that because I've heard good things.
Yeah, me either. I haven't seen The Straight Story and Dune. I never saw the old Dune.
Dude, it rocks.
Yeah, I mean, I had heard just people had said insane things about
The
it. And
first half is good.
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a fucking mess, but I mean, it rules.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, like I said, no one. I just heard like, you don't need to watch that, and just
Yeah,
like watch other shit and stuff. But yeah, I think it was like for me, Eraserhead, then Mulholland Drive, and so I was like a big fan of his like filmography, like his features and stuff. I just had like Twin Peaks in my mind. This is gonna sound insane, but like I was like 2 years old when Twin Peaks came out, so I don't remember it obviously. But like as I got a little bit older, and like I would watch sketch shows a lot, so like that's how I knew a lot about like pop culture and stuff. And But at the time, Twin Peaks came out the same year as this show called Northern Exposure, which is like if you know anything about that show, it's like not like Twin Peaks at all. It's like a dramedy. It was like a well regarded show. It won like a bunch of Emmys, but it was like a sitcom like set in like a small town in Alaska. And if you're like 3 years old, like at first glance, you can kind of see how maybe somebody would get him confused. So for the longest time, I just thought Twin Peaks was like some kind of like silly sitcom or something. Like I just thought it was like a silly '90s show or '80s show.
Yeah. I guess for me, like my exposure is that I knew that, like I knew who Lynch was. Like I think I knew what Twin Peaks was before I knew who Lynch was, because I remember everyone, kind of talking about the show and loving the show and like not people I knew obviously, but like you kind of hear it through the grapevine. People are like, oh yeah, Twin Peaks, like that's a good
Yeah.
show, that's like critically acclaimed or whatever. And then I found out who Lynch was, I think in like high school. I didn't watch any of his movies. I just knew he was like the weird guy who made weird movies. And a lot of people were like, yeah, this guy, you can't really figure him out.
What
Like,
most people's knowledge of Lynch is basically.
yeah. I
yeah.
used
So,
to I used to confuse David Fincher and David Lynch, and it took me
Yeah,
like years before I learned the difference between those two guys.
yeah, I
yeah.
totally
So,
see that. Yeah.
so like, my thing with Lynch is that I never, so I didn't watch, I knew a guy who was like, I heard Mulholland Drive's great. Like my film friend, like in high school, was like, I heard Mulholland Drive's great. Let me, like, my uncle says he really likes The Elephant Man, so I'm gonna like
Mhm.
watch The Elephant Man and then watch Mulholland Drive and try and get into Lynch. And he was like, I can't fucking watch this movie like Mulholland Drive. He's like, I liked The Elephant Man, all right, but
Yeah.
I did not like Mulholland Drive. So I was like, all right, I'll try it. This was like when I was too young. So I think me and a buddy sat at a computer and tried to watch, as Lynch intended, tried to watch Mulholland
It
Drive,
real.
and the
Yeah,
audio was fucked up.
watching an MP4 on like Winamp
Yes,
on
no,
a
for
Dell.
sure. And like the audio was fucked up, so we ended up not being able to watch it. Right. And then I think it was like, what's crazy is like when I was in college, like no one talked about Lynch in college. That's how most people find out about Lynch, is through college.
Yeah,
Because he's like the thinking man's filmmaker.
he's like the
But
guy when the girl goes out with the guy who like wants to seem smart and like not like other guys. I like David Lynch. Okay, you're not.
yeah.
I'm not
So
like your last boyfriend. Okay, I'm a
yeah,
little
so
different.
so I actually had a film, my only film class in college. I took, and it was films about trekking across America, right? The American landscape, travel movies, and The Straight Story is one of those
Hmm.
movies. So we watched it, had no clue it was a Lynch film. I literally just this year found out it was a Lynch movie.
Yeah, I never heard about it. I known about like he's one of those people who I known about everything for like a long time and just didn't get into it because again, like I made the stupid decision of like assuming that I knew what it was right before I actually knew what it was. And
Yeah,
like I said, that's why I don't know if everyone is like this, but me personally, I needed someone to be like, no, you don't get it. You have like it's not what you think. You have to watch it. But at the same time, like I don't know, I feel this way about Lynch and like a lot of other stuff too. Um, like now that I'm in my 30s and I'm still discovering stuff, like I'm glad that I didn't watch a lot of this stuff until I was older, because I feel like had I been younger, I totally wouldn't have appreciated it. I wouldn't have like I would have probably rejected it. You know what I mean? Like I don't
Yeah,
think if I saw if I, like, and again, like I'm just speaking for myself personally. Like if I saw it in high school, like I wouldn't have appreciated it as much.
Mhm.
You know, like it just took me a while to like really like, oh, you know, because you also he is very popular in film Twitter, and so I think like I'm
Yeah,
always just like that kind of like a rebellious person where I'm like, oh, if everyone loves it, then I'm just gonna ignore it, you know?
for sure. And like I like just to conclude my like introductory into Lynch or whatever. Like I didn't watch Twin Peaks until like 3 years ago. I didn't watch like so I saw The Straight Story, hadn't seen any of his other movies, and then watched Twin Peaks like 3 years ago. A chick that I was like crushing on Twitter or whatever really liked Twin Peaks, and she was like, "You gotta watch this shit," and I was like, "All right." So I watched like all of Twin Peaks because this girl told me to, and I was like, "Damn, this show rules!" Right? Like it's
Yeah.
awesome. I forgot it was like on some streaming service for a while.
It was on
Um,
Netflix. That's why everyone was watching it.
yeah, so it was on Netflix, and then The Return was on Hulu for some reason.
Mm.
So I watched all of it. Was like, this is awesome. This rules. And then I started like my Lynch journey through there. I watched. I didn't rewatch Eraserhead, or I tried to watch Eraserhead and just turned it off and was like, this shit sucks. And then I was like, all right, let me just try, get through his kind of filmography. So I watched. Chase actually was the one that told me. He's like,
Mm.
oh, dude, like if you like Twin Peaks, like you gotta check out like Blue Velvet. Like, don't worry, like you'll like it, I promise. I'm like, all right. So I watched Blue Velvet, and then I was like, hell yeah, because I've always been like with Lynch, I've always liked Twin Peaks,
Yeah.
but like his movies, like a lot of his movies are like insurmountable for my taste, right? I'm just like,
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if I can watch these. And then Chase is like, no, Lynch is one of my dudes. Watch Blue Velvet. Um,
I think I
and
was there because I remember being like, no, Blue Velvet is a solid movie.
yeah,
Yeah, because Dennis Hopper is so fucking good in that, and you know he
for
brings
sure. For
Patrick
sure. And I
Warburton.
watched Blue Velvet and loved it. And I was like, this movie's amazing. Went back, watched his filmography, and there's my story. It was like really, really, it took, honestly, that's the reason we had Chase on too, because we know he's a Lynch guy. But it took Chase to be like, dude, Lynch is my guy. Just watch Blue Velvet for me to continue to
Yeah.
watch
No, I
Yeah,
Lynch.
totally.
it's
Yeah.
with Lynch. Oh, actually, speaking of Blue Velvet, about a month ago, I saw a screening of Blue Velvet in 35 millimeter
Wow.
at at the Letterbox Theater in Chicago. It was part of this David Lynch Fest. I unfortunately was only able to make it to Blue Velvet, but they did his entire filmography, including like his experimental films, and I don't know if they did like Twin Peaks or like On the Air or anything,
I
but
think they did, actually. I think I'm pretty sure they did like The Return or something.
yeah, but it was really cool. They just tons of Lynch fans. I saw it. It was like a packed house, like hundreds of people. They did like Lynch trivia with like, prizes and stuff. It was really cool. But yeah, I think Blue Velvet is such a great way to kind of get into
Mm.
Lynch because there are only a few of his movies that have a straightforward narrative from beginning to end, where as a casual viewer, you know what's happening the entire time. And Blue Velvet is one of those,
Yeah.
and it's also just a fantastic movie in general. I mean, I remember the first time I watched Mulholland Drive, I was like 17 or 18. I had convinced one of my friends to watch it because I, heard it was good on Reddit or something. And we sat down to watch it, and like 2.5 hours later, we're both just like, what the fuck is this bullshit? Like, what? Why
Yeah.
did
Yes.
we just watch this? What the fuck just happened? And then I later at a later date, I was like, all right, I should give it another shot. And so I watched it again, and it kind of clicked for me, and it became like one of my favorite movies. Like it was my favorite movie for years and years. I would show it to everybody. So it's just like you have to be kind of in the right mindset, maybe have like the right level of maturity or
Yeah.
like the right level of curiosity to get into some of his stuff. And he's not for everybody, like I understand that. But I
Mm.
think like there are a few movies that of Lynch's that if you show anybody, they'll probably see some kind of merit in them, you know?
I think
Yeah.
Lynch has those movies like before we start talking about like our double feature today, I think Lynch has those movies that are, like I kind of said, like incomprehensible, like when you try to watch them. And then for me, it's like Lynch is kind of like this guy that, and this is going to sound like a dig. It's absolutely not a dig, but there are some movies that you watch of his that you can get the first time around and they're good. And there are other movies that you don't. And I think he's one of those guys, much like, reading like a hard book or something, or like reading maybe philosophy, like certain philosophers, you kind of have to like beat your head against it almost to get it. You know what I mean? But like the reward that you get from like watching this challenging film is like more gratifying. Like once it clicks for you, because like it doesn't, I said on one of the episodes, I was like, one of my least favorite things about Lynch is like when I think he's just being like obtuse for like obtuse sake, right?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of stuff that like, I mean, even like this rewatch of Twin Peaks that I did, that I think like you have to watch something again, or you have to like kind of sit with it and like, kind of stew over, and it like it'll get you frustrated. It'll definitely, like, some of his work will get people frustrated, and I think that's a good thing, because once you get frustrated and you kind of work through it, and you kind of like, either continue to watch it or like think about it more, then you go, oh, like it's not like something that you get, right? But it's like an achievement almost of like, I stuck with this really hard thing. I thought about this really hard thing. This like grown up movie, and it like, I get it now. You know what I mean? Like it's one of those types of things.
Yeah, no, speaking of frustration, I the first time I watched Fire Walk with Me, I accidentally torrented Fire Walk with Me, The Missing Pieces. So I just watched like an hour and a half or 2 hours of like a bunch of randomly interspersed scenes with like no narrative whatsoever, and then it was over.
Yeah.
I was like, what the fuck just happened? And,
Yeah.
That was so
and then later
Lynchian,
I
man.
found out what happened, but
Yeah.
What's fun is that, I guess we can kind of segue into Fire Walk with Me now. But like, what's really fun about Fire Walk with Me is, so there's the missing pieces that came out, right? It's the deleted scenes, and one of the things about Fire Walk with Me at the time I was reading was that like critics and fans like fucking hated it, right? Because it was it was a completely different story. They felt like there was no, it was like, oh, it's a prequel. Okay, I guess, sure. We don't get to find out what happens to Cooper, and there's a lot of people that were like, there's no Twin Peaks elements in this, right? There's just like, they were like, where's the town? Where's the Twin Peaks elements and everything? And then I was reading that like, the missing pieces, right? The deleted scenes of the film were a lot of the town stuff. There's a lot of town stuff in the missing pieces. The missing pieces is an hour and a half by itself of deleted scenes that they shot, that they got rid of to make this to make my favorite Lynch film. So
yeah, I mean, Lynch is like, he's literally the Joker. Like what we think is weird and obtuse to him is normal. Like he almost, like, it's funny that he literally plays a director who has to yell at the audience, because that's what he always he really does not like even entertaining the idea of like explaining what he's trying to do, right? And but also to him, it seems so obvious. Like to him, he's told us everything of what it's about, like, right? Like to us, it should be like so obvious, and like it really frustrates him that people just don't get it, because to him, it's so like intuitive, I guess. And that's how a lot of his stuff is.
Well, to Lynch, his whole thing is that film is its own art form, and so film is picture and sound flowing through time. And so the cardinal sin for David Lynch is trying to explain a film in words, because it gets lost in translation. If you're trying to explain some kind of like one of Lynch's kind of like more avant-garde sequences in words, it's like completely ruins it. And so that's why he doesn't talk about the meanings of any of his films ever.
Which his co-creator Mark Frost does not share that at all.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Frost like over explains.
Frost Frost is crazy, bro. Like the final, like he wrote an entire book explaining Twin Peaks.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think he wrote a couple.
Oh yeah, he's
he
got
wrote
like
two.
yeah.
I'm not reading any of that stuff.
I
I'm
read
totally
part
not
of
interested.
yeah, me neither. But for
Why
recent,
should you, dude? It ruined like it completely. Like I was looking up like because I'm just kind of like jumping around just a little bit. I think like Audrey is a character that like because of studio interference and because of like Frost himself is severely underserved, right?
yeah,
Especially with regards to the return. And Frost's explanation of Audrey in the return and her appearance and the things that happen in the return is completely the most disinteresting that you possibly could think about like watching that. It's
yeah.
like any number of fan theories would be more interesting than like reading Mark Frost's explanation about what happens to Audrey.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say the only thing I read was part of the Laura Palmer's diary, which was actually written by David Lynch's daughter.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's pretty cool. But yeah, it's very basic. It's nothing really in it. But yeah, well, yeah, let's just talk about Fire Walk with Me, and we'll talk about we'll use that to talk about OG Twin Peaks, and then we'll talk about Return in episode 8, second half of the show. So yeah, we start with 1992's Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, directed by David Lynch, obviously. I didn't know this was originally supposed to be the first part in a trio, but the reception was so bad that they just canceled it. Because yeah, they planned on making like three more three movies after the show ended.
Wow.
This was all after the show ended. Again, another thing. I mean, there are a couple of like additional things that link these two pieces together. Part of it is the Woodsman, which I want to get to later because that to me is kind of like an explainer of Lynch. Like it kind of, but I'll get to it. But the other thing is that they're both kind of like codexes, right? Like I think Mark Frost probably was the one who described this as like he described the Return episode 8 as or part 8 or whatever as like the closest to like an origin story that Twin Peaks had ever done. And Fire Walk with Me is very similar. Like there's like the scene at the beginning where like Lynch brings out the girl who's doing all of like the symbolism and um like the Chris Isaac character teaches Kiefer Sullivan, like, this is what he's trying to tell us. And, like, it feels very self-referential in that way and stuff. And,
I love that scene. I interpret that
Incredible.
scene as I don't know if this is right because people disagree on this, but the girl with the dancing girl, Lil, I interpret that scene as kind of poking fun at people who overanalyze Lynch's stuff.
For sure, dude. No, that's 100% correct, at least
yeah,
in my opinion.
I
Where
think, or
the
the
thing
line.
is, the thing is about that is, if you guys have seen the 4 hour, Twin Peaks explained video on YouTube by that guy
Yep.
Twin Perfect,
Oh, we'll get
he
to that. Yeah.
he didn't get it at all. He thought that Chris Isaac's character Chet Desmond was like correctly interpreting the clues, and then Sam Stanley, Kiefer Sutherland's character, was like incorrectly. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
think the line that gives it away is like later on when Kiefer Sullivan's like, by my estimation, that everything in that office cost him $22,000, right?
Oh
It's
yeah,
like, yeah, it's just like, yeah, it's all pointless. Like it doesn't. I don't know. I think, yeah, no, I totally agree. Yeah, what were you gonna say, Matt?
yeah, so there's a video that you sent me, Steven, and it was
Oh,
was it
Maggie May. She's the other one. Yeah.
Maggie May, yeah. So she does Twin Peaks Explained or something like where she references that video. And she talks about how like that scene is like it's like it's like a parody, which I think this is an all right reading. It's like a parody of like of because like she says a lot of Fire Walk with Me is like a parody of the crime films of the time, especially like Silence of the Lambs, right? And she talks about how there's
Yeah.
like these super detectives that can like figure out things in the minutia, and so they're like, there's no like there's stuff in these crime novels and crime movies and everything that the audience would have no way of knowing like the information, right? Like, oh, like he had dirt under his fingernails, and that means that the dirt comes from like, him digging in the garden, and like, but he's not a gardener, and like, so, but the gardener was sick that day, and there's a replacement gardener, so he must be the killer, right? And there's like information that the audience can't know about to like make it a mystery. Which that's a good reading. But no, Chase, long story long, I completely agree. Like that, the ridiculousness of it. She like actually sneers at the camera at a point. He's like, "Yeah, local law enforcement is stinky. Like they're not going to be receptive to us." And
He's like, she gave a sour face. That means we're gonna have a problem with local law enforcement. It's like, oh yeah, of course. How was I not supposed to? How did I not know that? You know?
which is, yeah, all of it's like literally insane because it's like the weird. She's so weird, and it's like, oh, like like the detective characters are interpreting her, but like us as the audience, we have no like guidebook on how to like interpret any of that, because I mean they talk about like the hem of her dress and like how it's like it's been hemmed up and everything. And yeah, Chase, I 100% agree. Like when I was watching it, I was like, damn, he's like making fun at us trying to figure out like what's going on.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, this one's pretty obvious, but it's like David Lynch casting himself as the director. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just like it's pretty obvious that there's like a meta narrative kind of going on with it.
Yeah,
But I
that's
think a
what
lot
that.
of people go too far and
Mhm.
try to like make the entire show into a meta narrative and like reduce it all to a single point. Because in my reading of Twin Peaks, I kind of view it as an amorphous kind of thing where Twin Peaks doesn't have one meaning. It has different meanings at different times. And the original series and Fire Walk with Me, I view Fire Walk with Me as kind of the branching off point. Fire
Yeah.
Walk with Me is kind of the key to to deciphering The Return. And I think The Return and Fire Walk with Me have the same DNA in a way that the original series just does not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
So
very good way of
that
putting it. Like
I,
I couldn't. That's yeah.
I was gonna say too, like I think Fire Walk with Me is the best thing from Twin Peaks and the best thing from Lynch himself. Just my opinion, but like definitely I'd rate it 5 stars. It's my favorite Lynch film. But I have to say that like while I was doing a rewatch, right? Because I've seen all of them before, but then I decided to do it chronologically, so I rewatched all of Twin Peaks, the original series, right? And then I watched Fire Walk with Me and then The Return. And yeah, Chase, I agree. Like Fire Walk with Me and The Return have similar elements because in the original Twin Peaks, if you want to, you can ignore all of the supernatural elements and just say, "Oh, it's all metaphorical," right?
Yeah.
Like there's definitely like, you can ignore Killer Bob and like, and I still think they are metaphorical, but at the same time, like Fire Walk with Me and The Return specifically like really hits this point home. It's like, no, like there are things that are like like the Blue Rose cases are like
Mm.
actually a thing, right? Like it's not, it can't be all metaphorical, but it is. It's
Yeah,
Yeah.
well,
both.
it is
Same.
and it isn't because for me, it really irritates me when people try to reduce Lynch's stuff to like one-dimensional interpretations. So, like for example, Bob. It's like I do think that Bob is kind of a uh, I guess you could say like a metaphor, or like the subconscious of like Laura and Leland's fucked up relationship. But it
Mhm.
also isn't like it's not just a metaphor. He's also a character with like
Yeah.
motivations and
Right.
attributes and all that. And it's the same with like everything else in the show where uh for me like David Lynch like his core kind of new development, the thing that I think he brought to filmmaking that's totally new is this method of storytelling where uh, it's not that the character in the film is a metaphor for something else. It's that the film itself is like a reflection of the character's subconscious and their psyche. So if you're watching Mulholland Drive, the film you're watching is kind of filtered through the fucked up psyche of the main character. And so I think that's something new. And Lost Highway does it, Inland Empire does it,
Yeah.
Fire Walk with Me to an extent does it. And that's to me that's the key to understanding Lynch's stuff is understanding that no, you're not. It's not like you decipher the plot based on, oh, once I figure out that this character is a metaphor for trauma, then I'll be able to understand it. It's it's kind of like more circumspect than that, where it's like uh, the things that are happening in the movie aren't like a dream or a fantasy. They're like the kind of reflection of somebody's broken psyche. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like just on that point before we like really dive into Fire Walk with Me, I think that like um yeah, I was when I was watching Twin Peaks the original series, there's a lot of like dream logic within, right? I mean, like it's like you're watching it and you go like, how can you not like think about like dreams when like I mean, there's characters named Ben and Jerry and Harry S. Truman is the sheriff, right? There's a lot of
Yeah.
like things that are like, okay, that's kind of absolutely ridiculous. And like I said, like when you're watching the original series, you can kind of boil down um Killer Bob to like trauma because like within the text itself it kind of like makes sense, but like you were saying, like, right, Fire Walk with Me and The Return definitely turned that on its head where it's like, well, no, it's there are it's both, right? It can be both, or a different thing. It's multiple readings. It could be actually happening, or you're right, it could be through a psyche or through whatever. And I think like one of the bad readings of like the films, because I was listening to like a podcast talking about The Return, and I think one of the bad readings is like, oh, it's all a dream. It's like, well, okay,
No,
then
yeah.
what's the point? Like that sucks.
Yeah,
Like,
I think people often get like misinterpret like the dream metaphor. You can, there are quotes from like every big filmmaker ever. Like they've all used that metaphor to talk about film in the sense that like it's the closest you'll get to like being inside someone else's dream. You sit there in the dark, you see these images, it kind of goes from one thing to another, kind of like editing like in our dreams where it like cuts from one thing to another, like they mean it in like the broadest metaphorical sense, but like yeah, I hate when people are like, oh, that literally means it's a dream. It's like no, like we're using a dream as a framework for this like idea that we're all experiencing together, but it's not literally a dream. You know what I'm
right,
saying?
yeah,
Like,
that's what I'm saying. I think the interpretation that it's literally a dream is bad. And
so
if it is
cheap.
like if Lynch did think like, yeah, it's literally a dream, I'm like, okay, like then I don't think he has anything to say. But I don't think he thinks that. So is my point. But yeah, I want to talk specifically before we like dive into more general discussions again. I want to talk specifically Fire Walk with Me. What do you guys think of like the movie? Right, what would you guys rate it?
Yeah, it's like a 5-star for me. Because like I said, I like the thing is like I feel like you can watch, but like our double feature tonight, having known nothing about Twin Peaks and still have a good time. Like
Mhm.
because like again, I feel like both of these pieces like stand on their own and back to back. You can like you might not know specifically everything that's going on, but like I feel like if you watch Fire Walk with Me and then you watch Part 8, you can kind of piece together a narrative, and it like they like again they just seem like two parts of a whole, and like I hate to say like explainers, but they just feel like if you could watch either of these and like end it with like a fulfilled like a sense of fulfillment and a sense that like you've experienced something again, experienced the dream or you've lived the dream with him or whatever. And Lynch is also very into like transcendental meditation and stuff too. And like you can argue like meditation and dreaming, that's also like the same thing as like, in film, like it's all like it's all like of a thing, right? It's all like the same kind of ritual just played out in different mediums, I guess. Uh but yeah, I love it. Like I said, I love David Bowie shows. I think it's crazy because when I didn't think there was when I watched it because I did a full run watch through like last year slash like 2020 slash 2021 is when I did my watch through, and I was surprised because like it starts out obviously with like the new guys, but then we're very like it's not that long until we're like back with Laura Palmer, and I was gonna say like fake Donna always bothers me. Like I
I love that though. How it's like Lara Flynn Boyle was just so annoying to work with that Lynch was like,
Yeah.
all right, fuck you. I'm casting a completely different person. And
You
I
know what's
think it works pretty fine, you
You know
know?
what's crazy is like I hate to say it, but it does work to that like dream logic thing where it's like, oh, this is a person like it's like yeah, oh, I had a dream where I was like hanging out with my mom, but it wasn't actually my mom. Like she was being played by like Meryl Streep or something.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like that thing where it's like, oh yeah, it was I had a dream about Amanda Palmer and Donna, but it wasn't really Donna. It was like this other. It was like I know it's not Christina Milioti or whatever her name is, the chick, the wife from How I Met Your Mother, the mother.
Yeah.
Um,
To go to your point about Laura Flynn Boyle being annoying or whatever. So she was like, so she was asked to come back for Fire Walk with Me, and she was like, I have other commitments from her film. She was filming something at that time.
Might have been Wayne's World or something because she was in
I
that
don't
around the same time.
I don't know, but like Lynch also, I don't think pushed too much because so at the time of filming Twin Peaks, she was dating Kyle MacLachlan, and she was very pushy again. Like there was a whole sequence planned out where like um, after they solved who killed Laura Palmer, it was going to be Coop and Audrey. They were setting that up,
Yeah, they
which
set it up for like the whole first season, and then Lara Flynn Boyle was like, "Oh no, I want to be, I want Dale Cooper to be my boyfriend in the show too."
Annoying.
yeah,
Yeah,
That's
and
the worst
so
kind of
like,
shit, dude.
and then she gets like so she ruins like this is probably not fair, right? But I'm gonna say it anyway. Like she really does ruin like three storylines within the show
Yeah,
because like
yeah,
her and James are supposed to be together, and then she was kind of obviously being kind of hypocritical about wanting to date Cooper, even though like Cooper and Donna don't have a lot of screen time, if any. So
yeah.
then he was like, okay, fuck this. Like I'm recasting her and just recasted her. So
Can we like real quickly? James bad, Bobby good, right? Like we
oh,
all agree.
gotta love Bass Bobby. He's the
Yeah,
best.
Bobby's awesome. I was gonna say like technically because we were talking about this earlier. Technically,
Bobby
Bobby.
killed Mike. Bobby killed Mike.
Yeah.
Bobby
do
killed
you
Mike.
realize what you just did, Bobby? Yeah. Technically, Bobby kills the guy, but the guy was trying to kill him. All he's guilty of is being a faster draw, right?
Fastest gun
Uh,
in the West.
yeah. That was a
Yeah, for
straight up.
sure.
That was some straight up fucking
No
tombstone shit.
repercussions.
But yeah, because Bobby does have a good ending later on.
Oh yeah, his
Yeah,
whole storyline in The Return is so beautiful, and
he's
Dana
amazing.
Ashbrook,
Yeah.
really great actor.
Oh, I was gonna say, Chase, what was your rating, and what do you think of Fire Walk with Me as a movie?
Oh yeah. So I would say for Fire Walk with Me, this might be a little controversial, but on its own, I would give it maybe like 3.5, 4 stars. The thing is, if you factor in The Return, because they have such a relationship,
Yeah.
all of my complaints about Fire Walk with Me are addressed by The Return, and all of the stuff in Fire Walk with Me that makes no sense suddenly makes sense once you watch The Return. Even the stuff that like seems to be total nonsense, it all ties in to The Return.
Yeah, when
So
she like
with The Return,
screams.
I would say that I would give it, probably 4.5 or 5 stars.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm definitely, like I said, 5 stars. I have to say this, like, because I think this is like really important, and this is why it's like my favorite Lynch film. This is like so film theory nerdy, real quick, but like, so the first and second season of Twin Peaks, right? Like Lynch kind of portrays like, right, like Laura is the victim, right? Like Cheryl Lee, she's just plays a victim, and then they bring her on as Maddie
Yeah.
later on in the show, and
Who's a victim
so
also,
so she wait what?
because Maddie's also a victim too.
Yeah. So Cheryl Lee plays the victim, right? And in the show, and like she's kind of like the catalyst for the story to start in the show and in Twin Peaks. But like, this is gonna sound crazy, but like as like a filmic object, she is like, here's victim, she's the homecoming queen, she's whatever, right? Like she's like held up as like this paragon like in the town, right? And like Fire Walk with Me, the reason it's like a 5 for me is because like I actually think that, and this has probably been said before, but I do, when I first saw this I was like, oh, like Lynch loves this character, like Laura Palmer. Like
Oh
he
yeah.
like loves her, and it's not like he loves her and like all her flaws too, right?
No,
Because he
like
shows,
he's like in love with her.
yeah, and he shows like all these flaws, right? But she's like, he's like, look at this woman who, or this young lady who she's a victim, and she's a victim of violence in the household, sexual violence, and she's a victim. She's like in this larger narrative, but like she really does, like in Fire Walk with Me, kind of like she's tormented, right, completely, but like she really does like take charge, and I also really respect the movie because like as a female character, she's not like the dichotomy of like the virgin whore. She's like, sexual, but she's like,
Complex. She's
yeah,
multi-layered.
she's sexual, but she's like angelic, right? And she's a good friend and a good girlfriend, but a bad friend and a bad girlfriend, like all at once, right? Like it's not like oh yeah, Laura Palmer, the homecoming queen, died. Like that's it. She's a victim. End of story, right? Like Fire Walk with Me really does. It's like Laura's story, and
Yeah, yeah.
also I texted you guys this. I was like, yo, Cheryl Lee, like she deserves way like more credit, right? I mean, for Christ's sakes, like the first the first ever film or television appearance was in Twin Peaks, right? That was She was in college for theater at the time, and Lynch was like, "Yo, that's Laura from a headshot." And she does a lot. Like she shows like such emotion, and and she was figuring it out. Like I mean, and that's like a performance in Fire Walk with Me, like that she
Yeah.
gives as if like a first time, like this is my first movie, I'm figuring it out actress, right? While she's in college is insane to me. Like she's so
Yeah.
good in the movie.
No,
Um,
she is fantastic. Her performance in Fire Walk with Me is like the performance of a lifetime. It's brilliant. Her portrayal of Laura is just so heart wrenching, and just like it, you just want to help her while you're watching it. You just want to help her so bad, but because she's just like falling apart. Her psyche is just being torn apart, and you're watching it, and you just feel awful. And it's just, yeah, it's a beautiful performance, though.
and the scene where she runs out of the house with the picture and in the bushes, and that's like an all like heart wrenching, like oh my, like devastating. It really is like, and that's just like there's a lot of like movies you watch and you go, okay, like I get like the emotions that like someone's like trying to portray like on screen or whatever, but like you're not watching like an actress at that moment portraying like Laura, like
Yeah.
oh I'm upset. It's like it's like you're watching Laura like go through this, like seeing Leland leave the house. It's just fucking like it's so heart wrenching, dude. And it's
Have
like, and it's also like, I mean, the ending too, like with the angel and everything, is it's very like, oh, she didn't succumb to the evil. Like she's the strongest person. Like she's so strong. Right? That's what I'm saying. Like Lynch is like in love with her, right? He's like, this
yeah.
girl is so like her, like you said, her psyche's being torn apart. She's being absolutely tormented. This evil, malevolent force is absolutely trying to take her over, and then she's so strong that she chooses to die. Like and it's like
Yeah.
I choose death over this.
I was gonna ask if you guys have ever seen the video of like Cheryl Lee showing up as Laura Palmer for the first day of filming of The Return. Um I'll send it to you in the group chat or whatever because it's pretty good. But basically, she just walks on set. They're on the Red Room set, and Lynch just like kisses her, like not creepily, like he like just like it's such a tender, beautiful moment. I can't describe it without fucking it up, so I'll just send it to you. But yeah, he
Yeah,
like she shows up on set, and he's so like breathtaken by her and like kisses her multiple times and like it's like the scene from the original Twin Peaks whenever he's in when he's in when he's in the booth with Cheryl and he's like kissing her and Bobby shows up and he's
Oh,
like
you
it's
mean
a kiss
Madsen
young man or oh yeah
Kelly? You're talking about Shelley.
Shelley. Sorry, I said
Yeah,
Shelley.
you are witnessing a 3/4 view of two adults engaging in a tender moment, or whatever.
Yeah, there you
So
go.
great.
Yeah. He's the best, dude. I have to admit, I've probably seen like every episode of the Cleveland Show. And if you don't know, David Lynch plays the bartender. He plays himself, but he's a bartender.
Yeah.
But it's actual David Lynch. It's actual David Lynch. His voice. I like playing the show with the bear, the guy with the baby. He yells at me.
Yeah, those Beverly Hills property taxes have to get paid somehow, you know?
Dude, yeah, I still like I still love the, before we return, I still love in the return where the video where he's shaking the camera with Cheryl Lee screaming bloody murder like in the red
Yeah.
Oh
room,
yeah.
right? And then she's like, he stops, he like looks at the film and he shakes her hand. I love that. So,
Yeah, his relationships with his actors are just so beautiful to watch because it's so clear that there's such a mutual respect.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh,
they love him, he loves them. It's just great.
he for sure, like, I mean, absolutely, and you can see this like in all of the properties or whatever. He for sure loves like McLaughlin and Dern and yeah, all of them. I mean, he really he loves like all of them, and he's such a good from the stories that I've read and heard. Like, he's such a good director for like those. I mean, there's a lot, like, obviously, like, he's torturing, the things, and like he goes and he's like, "Hey, are you all right?" Like, and he's not like Kubrick, right? Where Kubrick's just like, "Yeah, you should just like die for this scene."
Yeah, you
right?
should kill yourself.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
like,
you don't like it? You should kill yourself. Yeah, probably.
he'll just like he'll get the best performance out of these actors, and then he'll sit them down and be like, "Are you okay?" and like give them hugs and shit.
He's extremely gentle. He's extremely like literally hands-on gentle. Like he handles his actors like the broken little baby birds that he knows that they really are, Because at the end of the day, they're actors, and he knows. He's like, I know you're fucked up, Kyle. Inside, you feel nothing. Yeah, no. But yeah, that I think one thing like we all can agree on. We haven't talked about this, but definitely, I think the actors from Twin Peaks. There are so many, like Bobby, Shelley. It's weird that of all the people that had like the biggest career, it ended up being like probably the worst. Donna, like the most like probably like unlikable person on set. I'm assuming Cloud McLaughlin had a pretty good career. He was on Sex and the City. That's probably where I first saw him.
Portlandia.
He's amazing in Portlandia.
He's
So
in
glad you
Agents
brought
of
that up.
Shield.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, he's a bad guy
Oh,
in Agents of Shield.
But he had a good, like, I knew him outside of, like I said, I knew him outside of the Lynch universe from Twin Peaks. But yeah, the actors who played, like I said, who played Bobby, Madchen, Amick.
He was in a lot, like, so apparently, like, in the 90s or whatever, she was in like some, like, I don't know, sexual thrillers or whatever. Just kind of played the sexy girl or whatever.
Ray Weiss obviously is like super famous. I know him. The first place I know definitely I can tell you the first place I saw Ray Weiss was in RoboCop. What's up?
Also,
hell yeah.
You were talking about earlier. I completely forgot. So Harry Dean Stanton makes his first appearance in Twin Peaks and Firewalk with Me, right?
Yeah.
And
Carl Rod.
oh my God, here's another like meta textual commentary from Harry Dean Stanton. He's like, when the FBI shows up, he goes, "I can't figure out a goddamn thing they're saying."
Yeah.
Because I can never figure out a goddamn thing they're doing.
His delivery of like when the FBI agents are trying to get into the trailer, and he's just like, this is all the more shit I gotta do. It's just so beautiful. And then obviously his appearance in Fire Walk with Me sets up his beautiful appearance in The Return.
Yeah.
One of like my favorite parts of The Return, bar none, are the Harry Dean Stanton scenes.
I don't like people selling their blood. Yeah. Oh man, it's crazy how many like I mean, like, so in the original Twin Peaks there was also like Molly Shannon before she was even on SNL. Dana Ashbrook is the guy who plays Bobby Briggs. I want to say shout out to Dana Ashbrook.
He's great.
He also had Heather Graham way before, Boogie Nights or anything.
James's name. I think James's name is James or something.
James Marshall, yeah. James Hurley.
Terrible.
James Hurley was played by James Marshall. There was Billy Zane. I I believe the guy who played Leo, his mother was the.
Eric DeRay, yeah, is his name.
There's a lot of like.
I think his mom was the casting director. I think that's how he got on there.
Norma
Yeah,
was.
he's not very good.
Yeah,
I-
that's what I was implying.
I tweeted out that was it Peggy Lipton, right? Who's Norma?
Amazing.
She's Rashida Jones's mom.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
damn. All right.
She was in Mod Squad. Like you said, Quincy Jones's baby mama, maybe the most beautiful woman to ever live, arguably. Like I would put her. I would, she's
Yeah, quintessential MILF.
Yeah, she's like still like just super. I mean, like breathtakingly gorgeous in The Return too, which is like
Yeah.
insane.
Oh, any age, any age.
Yeah.
And speaking of RoboCop, not only was Ray Wise in RoboCop, so was Miguel Ferrer, who was one of like the many people who like happened to die right as the Return was coming out. Jack Nance, we all know from. I was gonna say one more guy. Jack Nance, we all know from Eraserhead, but David Patrick Kelly, who like when I was the first time I saw Twin Peaks, I was like, man, how do I fucking know that guy? Like that Sean Penn looking. He kind of looks like that Casey Nat. Nate, like that.
Oh, nice cat. Yeah.
He kind of looks like that guy. Because he's the guy from the Warriors. Warriors come out to play. That's him. That's that guy. He's the guy who does that with the bottles on his hand.
Yeah, he's in Wild at Heart too, I think.
Yeah.
And then Jack Nance is also in Blue Velvet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of the things I was going to say, talking about all these like actors and everything, is one of the criticisms too of Fire Walk with Me is that Audrey, right? She goes to their high school. She does not make a return. It was because, again, it was kind of the whole I'm busy. Was it what's her name? The actress who plays Audrey.
Oh man, I'm blanking so hard right now.
Sherilyn Fenn.
Sherilyn Fenn, yeah.
Sherilyn Fenn, yeah. So she said that she was like, I have no interest in returning to this because like of how bad they treated my character in season 2, right? So she was very upset. She was super upset that the Audrey Cooper thing never went anywhere. I was like listening to on the Criterion of Fire Walk with Me. There's an interview with her, and that's exactly what she says. She was like, because of interpersonal relationships, she's like, my character was destroyed in season 2, so I had no interest in returning. And then Kyle MacLachlan, ever the statesman, was like, didn't want to throw anybody under the bus and was like, I just thought that was kind of silly. I mean, she's 18. She's in high school. He's an FBI agent. So I didn't think that would go anywhere. I didn't really like that storyline. Yeah, that was one of the criticisms. Because, I mean, she's one of the high school characters, right? And
yet again, the age gap discourse strikes again.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Kyle MacLachlan, what is he K-Hive or something? What? What's up?
But I mean, like, he's dating, like real life Donna, so I don't know. It's kind of a weird Fire Walk with Me.
Or David Bowie's suit.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. It's like the Roadhouse, I think.
Yeah.
Or wait, no. I think it's supposed to be in Canada.
Who knows? But I just know that, like, in the film,
how good can like
For
20
sure.
years before. And then one final connection that I think is a really interesting connection between Fire Walk with Me and Episode 8 is everyone's favorite character.
God, how much biblical imagery there was in like the like overlap of people who know the Bible and people who watch Twin Peaks is like very
Godless perverts.
godless pervert liberals, basically.
Well, I went.
The movie, the angel frees Ronette Pulaski, like undoes her wrist restraints so she can escape,
Yeah.
and then I've always found it so weird how Mike's character, like at the end of the movie, like he's kind of shown he's more of a neutral character. He's not really a force of good. He's more like trying to return things to balance, I would say, because uh, there's this like unintentionally kind of funny shot where Mike is like leaving after he throws the ring into the murder scene trailer, and he just like kind of steps over Ronette and just like walks away.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny.
He's so hyper focused on stopping Killer Bob, right? Like, and that's something that is pretty. That I mean, he traumatizes Laura with Leland. It's your father, Laura! He's screaming at her. It's your
Everyone's
dad!
screaming.
Yeah,
God, that scene is awful. It's
and then
not awful. It's just so hard to watch.
it's great, but it's because it's hard to watch. Yeah, and then she's like, literally, like they pull over, and she's like, "Who? What?" Incredible acting, right? With Cheryl Lee again. She's like, "Who was that, Dad? I feel like I know him." And he's like, "What? You guys aren't doing anything. What is this world coming to?" Like, this man like screams at me and my dog. He's like yelling at the mechanics, and he's and then she's coming to the slow realization that like Leland is the, he's the negative energy.
Yeah,
She came
that's
pretty
actually
close.
that's one other thing that I wanted to bring up is in the original 2 seasons of Twin Peaks. So in the second season, when Leland is revealed to be the killer, it's kind of treated as if Leland. I mean, they literally say Leland. He served as a good vehicle for me, Bob. And it's kind of exculpating Leland and kind of treating him as if he is not in control. But then Fire Walk with Me totally changes that, and you kind of see a darker side of Leland. There's one quote in specific towards the end of the movie when he says, "I always thought you knew it was me," and that's like the smoking gun.
Well, yeah, and then there's like in the it complicates it a little bit in the original series, but then again it's kind of like, oh yeah, there's evil in these woods, right? Like they kind of say like, was Bob real? And he's like, well, like whether Bob was a figment of Leland's imagination or was real, like we got the guy, and but you're right, it kind of hand waves it away, and then that's a chilling scene. Oh my god, one of the most chilling scenes in most movies is the you have dirt under your fingernails,
Oh
Laura.
my god, yeah.
And you're like, oh my god, what is this guy going to do? And she's just like, so like flabbergasted. She's like, what? Like, and he's like, go wash your hands right now. She's been a bad girl. And like, oh, it's terrifying. And then Sarah is like just kind of quietly like, please stop, and then she kind of freaks out a little bit,
Yeah.
but yeah, I read too, like, before we get into the return. So in the special features, right, there was this interview where they're talking about how David Lynch and Mark Frost said that they always knew it was Leland, but the three characters that they had was Dr. Jacoby, Ben Horn, and Leland Palmer, right? And
Mm.
so no one knew who it was. Like they never told anybody in the cast. They never told any of the studio executives who it was. And then the studio executive pressured them to find out. And so also imagine Amex said that they would get partial scripts. They wouldn't be able to read,
Mm.
all of their scripts. They'd have like their lines, like and the character. And then some of them were omitted depending on which character said them. Like if Leland was in a scene, like a lot of Leland's lines would be omitted. It'd be like, oh yeah, wait till he's finished saying his stuff, and then we'll give you a cue to kind of come in. But also one of the reasons I say like Cheryl Lee deserves to get is when she's Maddie in season 2, they filmed that scene the entire day of shooting. They just kept killing her. They kept filming that scene. They filmed it with Ben. They filmed it with Dr. Jacoby. They
Mm.
filmed it with Leland, and they filmed it with Bob. And she was getting killed for 14 hours straight.
Wow.
First time actress again.
Yeah. Very
Doesn't
crazy.
and that scene is very horrifying too, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Firewalk with Me, last thoughts.
Great. Yeah, I
5
just
out of
want
5.
like I said, one more thing. I do totally agree with Chase's thing about like I think just being like, oh, Leland was just possessed by Bob. Like that robs Leland of his agency. Like the more it's much more likely that like Leland is both like a good dad and a horrible monster. And like uh but Bob is also, like you said, he's also a real character and stuff. But he found a host in Leland. Like something that I found from the book. I actually want to get you guys' thoughts on this real quick. Like, because something I found in the book, because we don't really get a lot of doppelgangers really in the original Twin Peaks, but when I read the diary, there was a lot more of it there. And like talking about like Laura talks about seeing herself in the mirror, but it's a different person. Like there's definitely stuff with Laura's doppelganger and like her disassociating in the book, Laura Palmer's diary. And I don't know, maybe that was there in the original and I just didn't pick up on it. But
She has a doll. It's Maddie.
well, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, in the like an evil, like yeah, like like you said, she talks about seeing someone evil in the mirror or something. I don't know.
I don't think Laura's got an evil doppelganger because she's, like I said, in Firewalk with Me, he really loves Laura and he believes in her goodness, I think. And I think that's something that, like, she's not, like I said, she's you know, spiritually good. She's very three-dimensional. She's got like a lot of flaws, right? Like a lot of things
I, I
that we would consider like, or like, like prudes would consider flaws. But I think she's like an inherently like good force, I guess. Like if you were to
yeah.
say, like, oh yeah, Bob and Leland are negative forces, then Laura is can't succumb to the negative force because she's good. Which, I mean, kind of is less telling about Laura and I guess more telling about Cooper later on.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the doppelgangers in the original series, it's like different because it's kind of like the whole conceit is like this the structure of Twin Peaks in the first 2 seasons was kind of this soap opera edifice, and so
Yeah.
the doubles in soap operas are kind of like a genre trope, whereas in the Return the doppelgangers are like a supernatural thing with the
Yeah.
tulpas, so it kind
Tulpas,
of
yeah.
takes on a different character, you know.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I feel like the seeds were there at least in the original, or maybe I'm just reading too much into it. But hey, that's fucking Lynch for you, right?
Yeah, he
You s-
actually made fun of you in this movie for reading into it twice.
you smoke too much weed and you just like read into stuff and but like that, like also that's the fun. Like he knows people are gonna do that. You know what I mean? Like he knows people are gonna read into it, and I think, or you know what I mean. Like that's what makes it fun is.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I mean, how boring is it if you have a movie where every single time you watch it, you just think the exact same thing and you don't
Eh,
get anything new? But with
Like,
David Lynch, you every time you watch his movies, you might notice something new or come up with like a new idea, and I think that's
yeah.
really cool.
Yeah, and it's something. It's not like everyone walks out and is like, "All right, we can all agree that's what that movie was about, right?" Okay, good night. That's it.
Yeah,
We would never talk about his shit again. But like the fact that it's intriguing and mysterious and stuff, I think ultimately, because yeah, I did watch a lot of like I have seen a lot of David Lynch's short stuff, and I think ultimately like he is he's an artist, but he's also a showman, right? We see his son playing his doppelganger, or not his doppelganger, but like one of his self inserts, I guess. The little kid, and he appears in Fire Walk with Me. It's like, but it's played by his son or whatever.
yeah.
Another self
The
insert,
with
the grandma.
what are they? The Chalfonts, I think, or the Tremons, one of those.
Yeah, something like
The
that.
two ones, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, he's fucking with us, and we love it. And when we come back, we'll talk about The Return. Welcome back. This is the water. This is the well. Drink full and descend. We're talking David Lynch. That's right, motherfuckers. Welcome to part 2 of the episode, David Lynch, Twin Peaks. Now we're talking The Return, part 8. Like I said, I've even before I saw it, I'd heard people talk about this episode, like as something that stood on its own as a work of art. And yeah, like I said, I think both of these things you can watch like back to back and kind of have a good idea like of like an experience or whatever. But yeah, this is just like an awesome episode. I think, like I said, Mark Frost said it's the closest they've come to like doing like a origin episode. Mark Frost, who we've established loves to talk about the meaning, loves to explain. Whereas Lynch is like, you know, leave me alone. You just fuck that. He has zero interest in explaining himself. But yeah, I love this episode. Off the bat, I forgot that Nine Inch Nails was the musical guest in this episode. They were like my first favorite band. Them in Depeche Mode. As a young kid who got picked on a lot. Obviously, I was a big fan of. I didn't listen to them because I got picked on. Like I got picked on because I listened to them. I was like, wow, I like Nine Inch Nails, and people were like, nerd, we're gonna kick your ass. But yeah, it turns out Nine Inch Nails is extremely cool. I love the musical performance in this. All of like the black and the leather and the sunglasses. Like, I'm a total sucker. Yeah, I think it's cool. But yeah, The Return. What do we think?
Well,
Um,
I
oh, go ahead.
love The Return. It's fucking amazing. Episode 8 is obviously I mean, pretty universally adored, I would say. I haven't met many people who are just like, fuck this episode.
No.
Um, the Nine Inch Nails performance, by the way, I also forgot that was in the episode. That just, it serves as a testament to what a fucking insane episode it is that I forgot that there was a full length performance by the Nine
Exactly.
Inch Nails
Yeah,
in like the
exactly.
first 10 minutes of the episode.
Oh,
But
by the way, I just want to say this. If you are a fan of Nine Inch Nails or this episode or their performance in it, go on YouTube, search Nine Inch Nails Gary Newman. There's a video of Gary Newman performing Cars with Nine Inch Nails in concert like a couple of years ago. It's one of the coolest, most badass videos I've ever seen. Just like a high recommend if you're listening.
yeah, but yeah, I would say that this episode it kind of serves as it's kind of like a cosmogony, if I'm saying that right, of
Mhm.
the entire kind of origin story or genesis of the evil that was kind of birthed into the world, and this like psychic battle that's like taking place between these different forces that you can't really ever fully understand. We get to see the first appearance of what I assume is the White Lodge with the firemen and Lady Dido, and then obviously we see uh, Well, when the first atomic bomb test takes place,
Yeah.
we see kind of the birth of Bob, and yeah. So I don't want to
The
get too far into
spirit
it
or the
before we.
orbit. Yeah, yeah.
Is
The orb.
that Bob or I thought that was Judy?
Well,
Well,
there's a blob that comes out.
with
Gotcha.
Bob's face in it, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, I mixing up
Oh no,
events.
no, no.
But yeah, I don't
It's a
want to get
very
too
weird and
far into
confusing.
it before we hear from Matt. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I love the return. I really do. I just finished the complete rewatch literally before we recorded. I like 30 minutes before we hopped on. I finished the show again. Talking about you guys talking about the Nine Inch Nails. I have no connection to most music. I'm a self-proclaimed. It's more for the memes than anything. I actually do like listening to music sometimes, but I don't really get that much out of music. I just kind of listen to it when I run, or like if I'm just like bored or something. So like the musical performances in the return, I'm just like I fast forward through them. I don't care. It's
Oh
a
man, no,
Cardinals.
that's crazy, dude.
yeah, I was like, when they came on, I like lit up my joint, and I was like, man, I'm fucking there. I'm seeing
Yeah,
it
I don't.
before my
I
eyes.
don't
Cool.
care. I'm just like whatever.
Yeah.
I'll like fast forward
Also,
through them, and then when the characters start talking in the double R, or sorry, not the double R, the Roadhouse, and like play it, and then suffer through the music, and then just continue on.
yeah, the other musical performance in the return that I love so much is the chromatic song. I forget what it's called, but it's
Yeah.
yeah, that one's great. I was listening to that song like when I first watched the return. I was listening to that song like every single day. It's so good.
The Chromatics and Desire were both bands that I listened to before I watched this as well.
No,
Oh,
the
nice.
best musical
Desire's really
performance is James in the return,
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
singing that song that he wrote.
Or
Two random
Audrey's
ones.
dance.
Yeah, Audrey's dance. Yeah, uh, yeah, I liked this episode. It was good, but like I said, I just fast forwarded through the Nine Inch Nails. So
But so I have spent a great deal of time thinking about this episode. It kind of captured my imagination from the first time that I saw it, and I love it so much. I think it is such like a great encapsulation of Lynch's entire philosophy of film. If you
Yeah.
think about uh, so after the Nine Inch Nails performance, when the atomic bomb test starts, and it's just that 10-minute sequence with Penderecki's Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima as the soundtrack, and we get all these amazing visuals. Uh, that is to me the core of David Lynch, where it's like that is an experience that you can only have by watching and listening to the episode. You can't put that into words, and that's what Lynch is going for. As far as the kind of lore or the explanation, if we want to apply it, I kind of view the bomb. I mean, it's hard to apply one distinct explanation
Yeah.
because that's not really what Lynch is about. So I have like a few different interpretations. The first one is the most kind of obvious one is the bomb exploded and some kind of horrible evil came into our world. And I kind of you can kind of use episode 8 as a kind of way to decode the entire return, because I think episode 8 and the bomb are kind of reverberate throughout the entire 18 episodes.
Mhm.
We get the whole sequence of the bomb explosion. We get the rest of the episode, and we see this malevolent evil force kind of making its way into our world. We see Bob being born, and I think that it kind of reminds me of like Gnosticism, right? Where you have this you have a world that we live in, but it's a fallen world. It's fallen and it's disgraced, and humans that live in this world have these souls, and their souls are pure, but everything around us is so debauched and so broken, and nothing makes sense, and it's just a nightmare. That's what the whole return feels like. All 18 episodes, it just feels like something has happened and everything
Yeah.
changed, and nothing can be ever like it was again. And that's one interpretation. Another is kind of a more out there interpretation, I think. Maybe a little conspiratorial, but if you think about in our world the consequences of the atomic bomb,
Mm.
it's something interesting to think about is how much of our modern day technology came from the development of the bomb. You know,
Mhm.
our nuclear technology, the internet actually started out as ARPANET, and it was a network that was built to connect a bunch of different computers that controlled missiles,
It was
and
basically for missiles.
eventually developed into the internet as we know it today. So many Silicon Valley companies like Google started out as military or government contractors, and I think there's a little bit to be said about the connection between the evil in Twin Peaks that was kind of loosed by the testing of the bomb, and the evil in our world that was kind of loosed by the testing of the bomb.
Mm.
But that's just a couple of thoughts that I have on it.
I like that second one a lot, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I my viewing of it, like, without reading any of Mark Frost's The Final Dossier, is that yeah, it's like this dropping of the bomb, right, which is a force, because Gordon Cole, right, in The Return later on describes Judy, because like also, so yeah, I was like looking, because I was like confused, I was like looking it up because I remember, wait, doesn't isn't Judy at the end of this episode, and she the full amphibian insect thing is supposed to be Judy that goes into Sarah Palmer, which it doesn't explain that that's Sarah Palmer, but that is Sarah Palmer, right? Whose mouth it goes into or whatever. Um,
It's never really explained at all. I mean, she's around the right age to be Sarah Palmer, but they never
right?
conclusively say it.
They're never
Which, you
like,
know,
hey, hey,
because I think
Sarah, yeah.
isn't Sarah like 17 in 1987?
Is she?
I think so.
Hey, wait,
Oh,
Sarah's 17 in 1987.
Something like that. Because she's in high school when she dies, right? And the original Twin Peaks is like
No,
1989.
Laura. You're thinking of Laura.
Oh, Laura, sorry. Yeah.
Sarah's her mom.
Oh, okay, Sarah. Yeah, okay, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah, so she would be, yeah, that's the correct age. But like, yeah, because like Sarah is the housing for this like extreme negative force known as Judy, and then like, right, he kind of, there's a lot of like imagery with, like you said, with the bomb, where it's like this big moment in like history, right? This like super evil, right? It can cause untold death and destruction, and then like, I don't think it's a, like you said, there's multiple layers. You can kind of read it as like there is actually like an evil being loosed, like an actual force, or you can just say, oh well, like the bomb is the force, right? That's kind of being loosed. This evil. It's probably both, and then it's Bob, and it's these two negative forces, right? The masculine evil of Bob, right, and then like the kind of the feminine Judy, and this the woodsman, of course, they appear in this the you
Yeah.
got a light,
All right.
yeah, yeah. So like I said, there's these two negative forces that are unleashed upon the world with the bomb, and like, even I think before this episode, like you see Director Cole, right, and he's got a giant picture of the atomic bomb going off in his office, which is kind of a weird thing to have in your office, like as the director of the FBI, just a giant picture of the bomb. It's like, all right, I guess, but yeah, I kind of agree, Chase, with
but
the
but if the director has it in his office, then it must be important, right? Because
yeah, exactly.
David Lynch, Gordon Cole, they're both directors. He's just in my opinion, that whole thing with the bomb in his office is he's just telling you this is important. This is something I'm thinking about. This is something you should be thinking about too.
Oh, for sure,
Um,
and like,
Yeah.
a lot of the evil, more metaphysical stuff happens with electricity, right? Because like you were saying, like a lot of the technology kind of comes from the bomb, and like there's a lot of like static crackling and electricity, and that's usually when like evil shit happens, So within Twin Peaks, so
yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's,
when you think about fire, which is a major, kind of symbol or theme in Twin Peaks. I mean, what is an atomic bomb but like the most fucking insane, terrifying fire of all time?
yeah, and Hawk even kind of describes it, right? He's talking
well, like
about like the black fire, right? It's like
the the burning of wood, right?
Yeah,
Like
go
as
ahead.
fuel, or the burning of wood as fuel, like as fire, because um, obviously like the log lady is like a very important character throughout like the whole show. Her performance in like The Return is very heartbreaking. Obviously, she dies like 4 days after she records her parts.
Yeah, Margaret.
Yeah, and she's a lifelong Lynch collaborator. But yeah, so like and so the idea of like woodsman and fire and like power, like fire is fuel, I guess.
Well,
Is
the
like
book. Yeah, go ahead.
no, I was that's it.
I
I
was
was
gonna
just
say,
say that like that's like a very, because to me I think like it's all like I think Lynch in his head has very specific symbolism. Like to him it stands for something very specific. It doesn't necessarily mean it's something literal. Like it doesn't mean like, oh, this equals that. It's more of like this symbol has like a very specific meaning to him,
Yeah.
and it's something that he also feels is universal, because you know what I mean? Like it's like by seeing it, we can experience, we identify it as well, or we should be able to identify it in his mind. You know what I mean? Like, because that's why I
yeah.
think he gets so frustrated, because he's like, well, I'm giving you it all. But yeah, it's like it means something to him, but it doesn't necessarily mean something literal, I guess.
Well, yeah, and then like there's a bunch of stuff like in the original and like and then in the return where like wood is like you said, wood's basically like it can hold like spirits and memories and voices, right? Because it holds like Josie, and then the log lady gets messages from her log, right?
Mm.
All the time, but also the wood holds evil because it holds the lodges. It holds good, both lodges. It holds evil and good at the same time, and like very very much, I guess, like that can be kind of like, oh yeah, but the woodsmen come from the woods, and the bookkeeping boys, I think is what they're called, the thing
Bookhouse
that
Boys, yeah.
bookhouse boys, yeah. um but yeah, so you know they're talk about the evil in the woods, right? They're kind of like, there's always been evil in these woods type situation. And the fire, like you said, there, Hawk talks about the fire. He's like, fire's, a symbol. It can mean two things. It can mean warmth, but it can also mean, it can mean warmth, but it's also a destructive force. And
Yeah.
like, especially with the map that like the Major Briggs gives him, is that yeah, it's a like black fire, right? The Black Lodge mixed with the fire is obviously going to be a destructive force, and that's like you were saying, Chase, is like, and the Hawk even says too, like, well, electricity, right? Like it's kind of like fire was light and warmth, and now we have electricity, and it's kind of like, tying into the electricity and technology
Yeah.
can be both good and evil, and a multitude of things. And like you said, the atomic bomb is definitely like, extreme negative, destructive force that kind of unleashes the both Judy and Bob.
Yeah, it was funny. I was rewatching part 8, episode 8 yesterday, and I remember being so confused by it, but rewatching it really it made a lot more sense because I was able to get some distance from it, and when you stop trying to figure out every last thing and just focus on the big stuff, it becomes a lot easier. Because so in the episode, what we have happening uh at the beginning of the episode, there's a beautiful kind of sequence where Ray shoots Cooper, evil Cooper, and the woodsmen start to heal him. And this brilliant sequence where it's like fucking horrifying. I don't know if you guys know this, but the soundtrack for that sequence is actually Moonlight Sonata slowed down by like 100 times.
Oh wow.
It sounds so cool. Um, but then we kind of get into the episode after the musical break, and then so there's the atomic bomb explosion. We see the birth of Bob. I always was kind of confused about what the like kind of gray floating thing that like pukes out Bob.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be Judy, I think, but this time when I was watching it, I kind of thought of it as kind of a personification of the bomb itself, of the explosion.
Judy's the insect thing, right? She's the frog.
Well,
Insect.
that's if you remember if you remember the scene where Bob is birthed inside the stream of like kind of goop. There's
Yeah.
also other little eggs that come out, and the eggs look exactly like the one in the desert that hatches the frog moth thing. Um, but so we have our atomic explosion. The camera zooms inside of it. We get this beautiful sequence, and then we go to the White Lodge, where we have the fireman and Lady Dido. And basically, the fireman gets a phone call on that fucked up, like, huge phone thing.
Yeah, the weird. Well, there's like the weird machine in the room. It kind of actually looks like the Jeffries machine toward the end.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but it's like a bell thing that goes off that like makes an alarm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
so he gets kind of like an alarm or a phone call or whatever, telegram, and he gives birth to this golden orb that has Laura's face in it. And
yeah,
so I kind of viewed it as, I mean, Lynch is all about balance, the balance between good and evil, black
yeah,
and white, and I kind of viewed that as the fireman restoring balance when he kind of produces this orb that represents goodness, happiness, Laura, whatever you want to call it, and we see it kind of go into the earth to kind of to try to right this wrong, this
yeah,
injustice, this imbalance that took place.
Mm.
And the interesting part about the White Lodge and the Black Lodge is it's the White Lodge and the Black Lodge, they don't really seem like they're good or evil. It just seems like two different kinds of uh, forces that have to remain in balance. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Where they're not really I wouldn't say like the White Lodge is. I mean, it is a force for good, but not in
yeah.
like in a sentimental way. It's kind of like
That's
they
kind
just
of
want to
where
maintain balance.
that's what I was trying to say earlier. It's like no one is like really good or bad. It's all like it's again like it's all about maintaining a balance and stuff. And like if the light is necessary, then so is the darkness. You know, like on a very like simple level, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. Also, a fun thing from the scene with the fireman is like when he floats in the air and he's like levitating, laying on his back. It reminded me so much of like Lenin's mummified body.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
I made that connection. I don't know why.
That's funny.
What's the difference you think between the fireman and the because the giant, right? It's a different character
I think it's the same guy. It's just different names, right?
Yeah, I thought it was just kind of the same character.
because he calls himself the giant, and then I guess because the arm morphs into the tree, then he's got to be the fireman now. Who knows?
Something like
Yeah.
that.
Well, the
I
arm
don't
is Philip Gerard's arm, or not
Yeah,
Philip Gerard because he's the human, but Mike. It's Mike's arm.
Yeah, he cuts off his arm, and then the arm becomes the tiny guy, and then the tiny guy morphs into the
Yeah, it's a shame that that guy Michael J. Anderson he had some kind of falling out with Lynch where
yeah.
he demanded like
crazy.
millions of dollars to be in the return and was like calling him a rapist on social media or something. But it's a shame that he couldn't be in the return because he was pretty great in the original series.
Yeah, yeah, that's why they like made him the tree or whatever. Another interesting note about I just want to say like going back to like Audrey Horne, they Lynch and Frost actually tried to develop a spin-off series like based around Audrey. But it didn't work out, but the pilot evolved into Mulholland Drive.
Oh wow, yeah,
Yeah.
I did not know that. I knew Mulholland Drive was a pilot originally, but I did
Yeah,
not
but
know
it is an
that.
Audrey Horne thing, yeah. So
Interesting.
pretty pretty interesting, yeah. But yeah, I wanted to talk about like the woodsman because the woodsman shows up in this. Um, they also show up in Fire Walk with Me, but like in a very different form, like without the soot, basically. Um, and I don't know if you've seen like in the credits to Inland Empire. There's also like he's credited as like a like a what do you call it, a lumberjack, but he basically looks just like the woodsman character. You know, woodsman lumberjack is pretty interchangeable anyway. Um but like it's because the Inland Empire credits. I'm not ruining anything, but it's just like a big dance number by all these women who are like sort of casually dressed in like a hotel lobby, and yeah, just randomly there's like a lumberjack just cutting wood in the middle of it, and it's like very like out of place, and it like sticks out, and like I don't think that means that like that movie has a very literal connection to Twin Peaks. I just think that like it shows that like Lynch has this like set of symbols, like this symbolism, like these ideas for symbolism that he has been working on, and that he has been like trying to like they mean something to him, and he's been like like crafting them over time, basically. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
uh,
The Return is definitely like a greatest hits too.
it's like
Where his,
yeah, it's like an amalgamation of all of his like ideas, kind of like finally synthesized
got
into
like
like
all of the
one.
players, like Naomi Watts is in it, right? Like Laura
Yeah,
Dern's in it. Yeah, it's got all the Harry Dean Stanton. It's got all the, unfortunately Jack Nance passed away, so he couldn't be in it. But
yeah, and part 8 is just like the like epitome of that to me. Um,
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to get into the section with the woodsman,
yeah,
where they had David Lynch cast an Abraham Lincoln impersonator,
yeah,
and something interesting that I hadn't really considered before, the scene where the little girl who may or may not be Sarah Palmer is like walking home with that boy. She finds a penny on the ground and she picks it up and it's face up, and Abraham Lincoln, his shiny face
yep.
is reflecting, and so that's kind of interesting.
again, I don't
Um,
want to like, I don't want to obviously, Mark Frost explains too much, but yeah, it is Sarah Palmer. I was just gonna in the final dossier, he's like, yeah, it's Sarah. So anyway,
right. Um,
but it may or may not be. Who knows?
I mentioned during the Fire Walk with Me segment that I was gonna have say something about the horse. So, um, in the woodsman's little monologue that he repeats into the radio, he says, "The horse is the white of the eyes," which I think is that's like the most revealing part of his entire monologue. So, the horse is the white of the eyes, the white horse that Sarah Palmer sees repeatedly throughout the original series and in
Hmm.
Fire Walk with Me, and it's the white horses in The Return a bunch. Um, so my interpretation of this is that so the horse is the white of the eyes. The white of the eyes are the part of the eyes that can't see, and they're also the part of the eyes that you can see when somebody is looking away from something. So for me, uh, the the horse basically what it means is looking away from something wrong that's
Hmm.
happening, and obviously for Sarah that would be the abuse of her daughter
Oh, that's a good
at
one.
the hands of Leland, because
Yeah,
we see in Fire Walk with Me that Sarah clearly knows that something is horribly wrong. I mean, during the dinner sequence when she is trying to get Leland to stop abusing Laura about the her hands being dirty or whatever, and is clearly she clearly knows that something kind of is not right here. And then there's the scene in Fire Walk with Me when Sarah is drinking the milk that's like drugged from Leland, and
yeah,
you could just imagine when you're watching this that this isn't the first time, of course, that he's done this. This
yeah.
has been happening for years, and but she just can't square it in her mind. She can't see a way out. And I'm not saying that Sarah is like evil or a bad character, and she's a victim too, and I'm not trying to, obviously blame her for any of this. But I think that's a big part of this episode is looking away from
Yeah.
evil, looking away from horrible things that are happening around you, and that always stuck with me.
The white of the eyes and dark within. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I've forgotten how much like biblical imagery there was in this specifically, like the pale horse, like obviously like invoking the pale horse of the apocalypse, or like whatever. Like do you want to talk about like the explainer videos? Like because like I said, to me it's always just really fascinating because it has become like a cottage industry of like explaining Twin Peaks, and like I think a lot of them I like watching them because I like to see like the connections they make and stuff. Um
Well, I think the Maggie one is really well done.
Yeah.
And I think she has because she there's a lot of like people who talk about Twin Peaks and they're like, I feel this, right? I feel that, right? Like just baby. There's a lot of like baby readings too. Like they take everything like literal face value, um, and then they just don't really think about any deeper implications. Like I remember seeing like someone on Twitter and Chase, you actually like were like, this is so stupid, and I was like, yeah, I agree. Where they were like, Twin Peaks is about it's a perfect town and like evil comes out and like it's like
Oh, like Lynch is
everything
about
was good.
the creeping
Everything was
evil of the suburbs or whatever. That's so cringe.
yeah. It's like everything's good until like just this malevolent force shows up and ruins everything. It's like well no like even before like the killing of like Laura Palmer. Which is kind of the thing that sets the catalyst of like all these kind of evils to be uncovered. There's like drugs running rampant in Twin Peaks. It's like prostitution running rampant,
Yeah.
And I was before going on to the explainer videos. I wanted to say too about the White Horse is like like you said, Stephen. I think like it is kind of like harbinger of the apocalypse, harbinger of death and stuff too. But it could be like because like Lynch is all about the different meanings and everything
Yeah.
too. And it could be like because I think Sarah sees the White Horse right before she fades off, and it's like no one. So one of the things is like the thing about Twin Peaks and like the return, in my opinion, is it kind of busts the myth of like the savior, right? Because like Cooper, like ultimately, I guess in the ending, kind of fails to save and fails to redeem, right? Like it's not his, it's not his play. Like his idea is that, and we all think too, like once Cooper comes back, in the fold, once he becomes not Dougie but Cooper, then and he can go back, he can stop Judy, he can stop Bob because they already stopped Bob, right?
Yeah.
Or did they, type thing. Um, and he thinks he can go back and stop Judy, but also kill two birds with one stone, like he says, and then and save Laura. Right? That's his goal. And he wants to be Laura's savior, right? Because that's kind of a failing, right, of the entirety of like of Twin Peaks and of Cooper and of the FBI and everybody in general. So I think maybe the horse too could be like a there's no knight atop the white steed, right? There's no savior, right? Like it is kind of a failure of the entire. Like Bobby says in the original series, he's like, we all knew shit was going on, but nobody stood up to help Laura.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah,
And that's something that like she kind of sees this horse, right? And she, Sarah, and again, Sarah's a victim. You can't really blame Sarah for not standing up to Leland, right? But at the same time, like no one does. No one does. There's no knight upon the white steed, right? It's just an
I think
empty steed.
I think with this Sarah, it's the same thing as like Leland, where it's like she doesn't stop him, but she doesn't like. It's the same thing with Leland, where it's like he does love his like he does do this stuff, but he also like I think the reason why like Lynch separated Bob from Leland so much was to be like to say that he can be the father and the good guy, but also the really evil person at the same time. You know what I mean? I don't think it's literally two people. I think like it's all Leland still. You know what I mean? Like I don't think.
Well, that's what I'm saying. There has to be something in Leland that allows Bob to
Yeah.
to come in, right? Like I think that's something that's kind of like with the forces or whatever, like the evil negative forces, there's got to be something inherent, and not necessarily like like literal inherent, like they are evil or whatever, but there is something fucked up about Leland, right? And there's something slightly fucked up, because Sarah went through that. She lost her daughter, and then she realized her husband was raping and killed her daughter, and killed her daughter's like the cousin too. So it's like
and Teresa too.
yeah, and and he raped. He's been doing this constantly, right? And it's kind of like obviously something fucked up is going to snap, and she's going to snap, So
yeah,
but
no, I really like what you were saying, Matt, about how there is no savior, because I think that's if we're talking about this isn't episode 8, but the very end of the show, the last scene, which is so powerful and resonant to me, where
Yeah.
Cooper, crosses over. He's in another world or something, and he finds Laura, but she's not Laura anymore, and he's trying to remind her of, make her remember, and so he brings her back to Twin Peaks, back to her home. But when they get there, no one knows who Laura is. She never lived there, and the most horrifying thing happens. Everyone has forgotten. Everyone has forgotten who Laura was. Everyone has forgotten all of this, and Laura just screams.
And
it's horrifying.
The people who like appear to own, like, those are the actual owners of the house too. They like play themselves in the show.
Yeah. I always thought that was. I was never quite able to figure out why Lynch did that, but it is an interesting choice.
Yeah, I think some of because with a lot of the interpretations I found, even if they differed, I found a lot of them all agreed on the idea of like Twin Peaks being about, like, I can't figure out if it's a show about TV in general or if it's a show just about itself. You know what I mean? Like, I think those are two very different things.
I think it's actually both. Like, I think, like Chase was saying, it can be a multitude of things. Because I mean, for Christ's sake, like, we didn't even talk about Fire Walk With Me starts with a smashing of the TV.
Yeah, that's pretty clear.
That's pretty explicit.
Yeah.
Just in case you weren't sure how Lynch was feeling about his time at ABC.
Yeah, he was very not happy with that. So yeah, and then I mean, like, there's a lot of like TV imagery, right? Like, I mean, the cube, is definitely a metaphor for TV with all the.
Yeah, and there's a lot of like there's a lot of like references in the return to like TV and stuff, and I mean, I think I don't know, like, necessarily what he's trying to say though, because like saying it's about TV, I don't know. I mean, it could be about a lot of things, which it probably is, right? Like, it's not.
Yeah, that's what I think. Chase was completely right when he said that Lynch's work is about a lot of things. I think it can be about multiple things. It's about TV, especially like The Return, right? Like, I think Maggie's video kind of says this pretty explicitly, and I think I agree with it. Where it's the original Twin Peaks was a conversation about, right, like this medium that was kind of like, at the time, was looked down upon, right, like the soap opera elements, right, and then they kind of made this like a great meta textual mystery, Lynchian show about soap operas, and there's like a soap opera in the original Twin Peaks, and then like Lynch was talking about like prestige, like quote unquote TV, and like I think The Return is like there's a lot of like elements in The Return that are kind of like poking fun at prestige TV. I mean, like,
Absolutely.
So everyone's least favorite part of The Return was like actually on the rewatch was my favorite part. I love the Dougie stuff. Like, I didn't like it. I didn't like it at first, I was kind of like everyone else. But then once I was seeing kind of like what was going on, I was like, I love this. It's just like wholesome, but like it goes against the whole, like, because Dougie's, Coop, he's the main character, he's the main protagonist.
Yeah.
He's got like a bunch of plot armor, like multiple times, like, Mike and the Red, the lodges intervene, and Dougie like figures out this conspiracy, and they all think he's like a genius, and and then like also, I mean, Naomi Watts is definitely like the woman character, like in prestige TV, where everyone's like, look at this stupid woman character or whatever, but she's like the most competent one. She like pays off the loan sharks, and she is definitely like the driving force behind like Dougie, right? Coop. And
speaking of like meta narratives, I think one that I was thinking about recently with The Return is, I mean, it's in the title, The Return. I think the Return is kind of a commentary on reboots and reimaginings and bringing back old stuff from the past. And I mean, that's why the entire thing is, The Return is very hard to watch at points. I mean, it's almost like punishing you for watching it, where it's like they brought Twin Peaks back, but it can never ever be the same, and it's
The
not
most
trying
fucked
to
up.
be.
It's the most fucked up version you can imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean Cooper, like the God, I think like also I'm taking this idea from like I said like a podcast. Shout out to like Why Theory. They had an episode on. It's a good theory podcast. They had an episode on Twin Peaks: The Return. But I mean, they said, and I think I agree with this. Like the extreme delay that The Return does is a great thing that like kind of makes you more satisfied like when the thing happens because like the entire time you're watching the show and you're like waiting for Cooper, right? You're waiting
Yeah,
for Dale Cooper to come back, and it's like you have to sit through Dougie, and like Dougie's like the slow. I mean, he walks slow. He's like, he can only repeat what other people say to him, right? Like he kind of like there's a lot of like introspective, like come on, hurry up moments with Dougie because we're like everyone's waiting for Cooper, right? And I think that's why people don't
yeah,
like the Dougie parts, but like the thing is when Cooper comes, it's so satisfying because I mean, like he the reveal is right like when he finally comes back after the coma and he's like, they're like, we should call the FBI, and he turns around, he's like, I am the FBI. It's like this swelling
yeah,
music and everything, and it's kind of like the thing that finally pays off. And the same thing like they've said that happens with the Norma Ed thing too, right? Like there's like Ed comes in and he's like, Norma, Nadine finally, and that I think that was definitely meta. Like the actress who plays Nadine, I don't know her name. Please forgive me if you're listening, but she's like, I was just a bitch. These entire like she says it so forcefully, dude.
I
And I'm
have been a bitch.
Yeah, and I'm
yeah,
just like, oh, that's definitely gotta be like meta, right? Like, because it's just like, and she's completely blaming herself, right? Which is what the kid, like, the viewer of the show probably does, because they're like, why can't Ed get with Norma, right? The
yeah.
entire time, and she's like, I'm a
Like
bitch, and
fuck
I've
this
just been,
fucking bitch, dude. Like, yeah, you're
yeah,
like,
and
yeah,
I've
no,
just
that's
been
100%
so
what people
selfish,
are
and I've
thinking.
known that you and Norma have loved each other, and she's like really
Yeah.
hamming it up, and I'm like, yeah, Lynch is like, see what this is, what you're getting what you want, you fucking
Like,
crybabies, right?
yeah, you're not supposed to get what you want. Yeah,
And then
especially in TV.
yeah, and then like Norma, like Ed goes in there, he's like, yo, like Nadine's kind of freed me. And then Norma's like, hold on, here comes the boyfriend, right? And she like leaves, and then he sits down, and Shelly's like, what do you want? He's like, I'll have coffee. And then she walks away, and he goes, and a cyanide tablet, right? And he's just so dejected. And then like it takes like a whole conversation with like Norma and her business manager, who's also like her partner, right? This
Yeah,
whole conversation, like it happens, and then you don't even know that like she's going to get together with Ed until like he leaves, and then she walks over and is like, he goes, will you marry me? And she's like, of course I will. It's in the
yeah,
delay that you get the satisfaction.
Yeah, no, that scene's amazing. I love how in that scene before, when when Ed thinks that he just like blew up his life, and he thinks that Norma isn't going to be with him. He's kind of like meditating,
yeah.
with his eyes closed and waiting, and
And
then
his little
uh,
David Lynch haircut.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
For sure.
definitely interesting stuff there. This isn't really specific to episode 8, but just throughout the return, I love just all of the little just kind of references to our modern world. How
Yeah,
seemingly like unconnected, just uh, like just horrible, horrific violence just kind of seems to randomly happen, and it's not obvious where it's coming from, and just everything seems just kind of like scary, and like anything could pop off at any moment.
I
Like,
think yeah, I think the scenes like outside of like outside of the bar, like with with the quote unquote normal people, where they're all like possessed and shit and like puking black
Oh my
shit.
god. Yeah, that scene with the double R diner too, where
Yeah,
that
I feel
kid
like
puts this gun, and then that girl's honking the horn. She's like, "She's sick, she's
oh
sick," and
yeah.
that
god,
kid's spewing bile. It's like crazy.
I
There's a lot of evil
I,
stuff
I,
happening, and
I was just
then
gonna say like that to me feels like the most direct response of Lynch talking about like the world that consumes his art. I guess like technically, like, I don't know if it's technically talking about the audience or like an audience at large, but like I don't think he's talking about his audience specifically. But I think he's talking about just like general audiences, and like they have this weird mix of like panic, but like also like everything's so disgusting and like violent and fucked up, but like they want to get like they, you know, like she's trying to like get somewhere, but like everyone's like puking bile around her, and it's like it's this insane, like where are you trying to go, you know, like
Yeah, and then Bobby is just like reacting to it. It just cuts to his face
yeah.
and he's just so confused. Like he tried to get out there and help, but it's just
Mhm.
like he
Exactly.
because the he went out there because the somebody like a kid like shot a gun
Yeah.
that they like got their hands on, and then a completely unrelated like car behind the car that the gunshot came from. It just has this like horrible thing happening. This kid's sick and this lady's fucking screaming, and he just has no idea what to do. And yeah, I
Yeah.
love that scene. It's just so like fucked up and haunting.
Yeah, and like I said, the lady, 'cause she's like, I mean, I feel like even when I want, you know, like she can just drive around these people, but instead she just like honks and just. I feel like that to me is like direct, like that's a Lynch's most direct like response to his audience, basically.
She's not even concerned with like she's like, we got dinner plans and like we
Yeah,
gotta get with 6:30, we're already late and blah blah blah. And like then she's like, she's sick, and then you see the kid like rise up like a zombie spewing green. He starts screaming bloody murder. Yeah, there's definitely like a meta, like the evil is you know more, I think like not meta, but they're like the evil is kind of like more prevalent, you know.
yeah.
Like it's more easily, you can see it easily, you know. It's like a lot of evil shit's happening, and yeah. What's interesting though is like the little trailer park, besides like Becky, right? Amanda Seyfried plays
Yeah,
Becky,
yeah.
which is Shelley's daughter. Besides her husband, most of the people at the trailer park are very nice people. Like
Yeah.
Harry Stanton's just like this nice man, you know. Like
Yeah, I
Oh,
love all the
like
scenes with Harry Dean Stanton where he's just kind of looking out for his people.
mm,
yeah, and it's like it does seem like he's kind of like there's a lot of like there's a lot of depression like stuff going on, right? Like everyone's like living dollar to dollar. They don't have any money, and you know the economic depression hit the trailer park really hard. And a
yeah.
guy selling his blood and stuff, and he's very like Harry Dean Stanton's very much like I don't know, like he's such a bastion of like hope too, you know, and niceness that he's kind of like, and he's like a curmudgeon too, which is so funny, you know, like he usually plays like a curmudgeon guy, and he's playing this like really nice old man who's like keeping it all together, you know.
Look, here's the thing, Harry. You're playing a guy who doesn't want to get fucked. Nah, sorry. I didn't.
um, so let's do okay. So I guess we should do thoughts, you know, final thoughts on the return as a whole, and then also Chase, I want to hear your thoughts on reaction videos and everything, the explainer
Yeah.
videos.
Yeah.
Yeah, because yeah, because I just want to say, I specifically invited Chase so that he can respond to the explainer videos.
Yeah. So I mean, just generally, my reactions to the return would be, it's brilliant and I love it, and I hope that David Lynch is able to make more things like it.
Yeah,
But you know, he's had a long career, and if he's tired, then I understand that too. Uh, as far as the explainer videos go, I it I watched that 4 hour Twin Peaks explained, no really or whatever by Twin Perfect, and it really kills me because it's like he says in the beginning of the video, like, yes, I understand that David Lynch doesn't like to talk about his work because putting it into words kind of destroys it and it's lost
that's
in translation. But then
that's
he
very
does it for like 4 hours straight, and it's like,
yeah.
what are you fucking doing, man?
I was gonna say like the David Lynch's philosophy is very Tarkovsky esque in that sense of like a movie is inherently like it's audio and visual, so it's like it's not words. So like you shouldn't have to be able to explain your feelings in words because it's not words. You know what I'm saying? Like it's feelings. It's art. You know. And I
Yeah,
think
and
yeah,
it's like pretty clear that he wanted to make a really long video because he does have some interesting ideas throughout the video. I mean,
Yeah.
it would seem like most of them might be by accident, because if you're like filling 4 hours, you're gonna say something right. But it most of it is just garbage. I mean, he like just makes all these connections that make absolutely no sense. It's like any scene in that video where he's trying to break down a Twin Peaks scene, it's fucking complete nonsense. Like, I know I watched the Maggie Mayfish video that you guys were talking about, where she kind of puts some of the more ridiculous things that he says like out of context, and kind of makes fun of them. And I think the Maggie Fish video is obviously a lot better than the Twin Perfect one. But I think those explainer videos kind of demonstrate the power of Lynch's kind of filmmaking style, where it's like these people, those two people, both have totally different reads on Twin Peaks, and I kind of see The Return as kind of it's kind of like a prism, where it's like if you're looking through it, two people could see like totally different things.
Yeah.
But I think the kind of like Twin Peaks Explained thing is just so shitty, because it's like, imagine if somebody made a video called "The Mona Lisa Explained," the secret, the secret meaning behind the Mona Lisa. And it's like,
dude, you should make that video. You would get a lot of money. You would make a lot of money.
Maybe. I guess maybe they just care about ad revenue and they don't. But
Yeah, dude, it's all about clicks.
It's just like there's no such thing as like the secret meaning behind Twin Peaks, and there's no such thing as the secret meaning behind the Mona Lisa. It's just it is what it is, and it's the story of Twin Peaks is you just get out of it what you kind of put in, and it's kind of, I think that David Lynch designed it in a way that is not meant to follow a strict map of meaning. I mean, it's pretty obvious to me if you watch it that that's what he's doing. And so it's the entire idea of watching like a 4-hour video and then at the end you're going to completely understand Twin Peaks and everything about it is fucking ludicrous.
I think from what I'm hearing, and please tell me if I'm putting words in your mouth, I don't want to do that, but I think what you're saying is that there's a difference between saying, I think this is what Twin Peaks is about, and this is what it means to me, and this is kind of the symbolism that I get from it, versus this is Twin Peaks Explained, which is what it sounds like the video. I didn't watch the 4-hour video, but I did watch the Maggie May Fish video, and like it from what I've heard about the 4-hour video, though, it's like this is what Twin Peaks is about, but it's not like this is what Twin Peaks is about to me, right? Because like, I mean, we even did like in the podcast, we were like, this is what I think this means and whatever, but like we never said this is what David intended,
No, yeah, he literally in the 4-hour video, he says he like pulls up a bunch of like random quotes from David Lynch and like tries to kind of say like, oh, David Lynch said this in an interview, so
yeah, it's really
if we apply this to this, and this is exactly what he intended to say, and like he yeah, it's just complete bullshit.
Right. And I think, like, again, please tell me if I'm putting word in your mouth, but I think the problem that you had with that is that he's like, this is what is intended. Like, this is the message. I figured it out. But it's like, while we were talking, it was kind of like.
We should say his ultimate, his ultimate conclusion is that Twin Peaks, the message of Twin Peaks is that TV is bad. Which, like,
well, yeah, his kind of thesis is that Twin Peaks, David Lynch thought that TV violence was like the wrong kind of TV violence. Yeah, and so he wanted to
balance in the medium of television.
Yeah, and so his idea is that like David Lynch wanted to bring balance to television by creating Twin Peaks, where the victim is like very humanized throughout the series, and it's like. That's one aspect of it, that like David Lynch has, the central victim in his series. Instead of putting a victim per episode, the entire show is just about this one victim and kind of exploring, their life. That's an aspect of it. But to say that it's the entire idea is just idiotic.
And also, like, just like, because he talks about like Twin Peaks being about balance, which I agree with most of what he says there. But then that also kind of defeats his thesis, because by definition, like TV violence isn't bad. It's like what we were trying to like talk about earlier, where it's um, like TV violence is part of the balance, right? Like, you need that to balance out the good stuff, and like, so therefore, like, it can't be bad. You know what I'm saying? Like to say like, oh, TV violence is bad, and like it's like it defeats the whole purpose because it's like again, it's like it's all a part of like a balance and like
Well, Lynch likes TV too. Like that's something that like you have to, because I mean he'll like
he likes all
in
that rock and roll shit too that supposedly he is calling evil, right? Which I
yeah, like I
totally
mean
disagree with.
he likes like soap operas, and like he was talking like in the not like when he made Twin Peaks, like he was just like I like these things, and he said that like I felt I kind of I don't remember which interview it was. Obviously, I don't have like that type of memory, but like he was talking about how like he liked watching these types of shows, and I mean like he you can make something that's like critical of that, right? But at the same time, as he's not like his goal, and I guess his goal in making Twin Peaks isn't like to boil it down to simply like I'm trying to square the circle. I'm trying to finish the circle of TV. It's like the project. I'm trying to complete the project of TV. Is
Yeah,
not
it's
doesn't make sense.
people love to try to paste some kind of political ideology onto Lynch's work. It happens a lot. A lot of
Oh, they
people
just did
think
that
that
with like
he's
yeah, trying to call him conservative.
yeah, a lot of people try to say that he's socially conservative, and then a lot of people. I mean, I think that there's something to be said about his. Uh, After Fire Walk with Me, he made like a series of films focused on, female characters, and kind of went away from his male centric, uh, movies like Eraserhead or Blue Velvet or whatever that
Yeah.
he was doing. So I think there is something to be said about that, but it really kind of depresses me that it's like people are so programmed by the media and like the political establishment that they can't even think of like a world outside of their shitty little CNN or Fox like politics. And then so they
Yeah.
try to copy and paste it into every single piece of art, and everything that they see, it has to fit with this political dichotomy. It's like that's just a sad way to live. You don't want to do that.
No,
Yeah.
for sure, dude. Like for sure. I mean, it's the same people that like they'll just be like, yeah, like Batman's fascist or whatever. It's like, well, you can say that, but like in the
Yeah.
world, like Batman's like he's
I
in the world of
look.
Batman. He's like the true justice. Like it's not.
Yeah, I have such a problem with like I think there are a lot of readings of Batman that are very base level and like it's like, oh, Batman, like, no, he's not a fan. Like, first of all, like I mean, like I get really upset with shit like that because it's like he's a symbol. He works like, again, it's like it's much like Lynch's filmmaking. It's highly symbolic, and like I said, I do think to Lynch the symbols have very definite meanings. I just don't think that those meanings are these literal meanings that people try to assign to
Well,
it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they
yeah,
have a
for sure. I mean,
meaning, but the meaning is a feeling. It's not like
It's a
a
vibe, exactly.
yeah,
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 yeah.
for sure. I made the joke on Twitter, but I do think that like it holds more water than like it's like, oh, he's trying to finish the circle or whatever. It's like I said, Twin Peaks. A lot of people are like wondering what Twin Peaks is about. It's about a good cup of coffee and hot chicks. Like it really like there's like vibes. There's a lot of vibes going on
yeah.
with Lynch's
Like
work.
like I
Yeah.
definitely watch it and feel like, oh, I can see how like I could get how I could subconsciously be sent the message of balance, right? Because he does send that message a lot, right? And
Yeah,
so
and
I can see how I could pick up on it.
yeah, I mean, we've been talking all night about Twin Peaks, and I think one of the core things that we've been talking about is how it's changed over time,
Yeah,
and how Twin Peaks isn't what it was in 1991. Now it's totally different. And so when people try to say like this thing that's 30 years old and it has been evolving and changing over all this time is about one specific thing, it's just kind of ridiculous.
yeah,
I mean the ridiculousness too is like it being static is like I mean they show the pilot right in the return in like the last episode of the return where or the next to last episode where Cooper's saving Laura quote unquote, and you see you see like a Laura's body disappearing from the pilot, right? Like it's kind of
yeah,
like a like you can't because the pilot happen. Like I watched the pilot like a couple weeks ago. That doesn't happen, right? Like it's not like it's an ever changing, thing, right? Because the return's not the original series. It's literally the return, like you said, Chase, like earlier. It's literally the return. Like you can't create Twin Peaks the same way again. It's different.
Yeah,
You
that's one of the
know?
huge themes of the return is you can never go back to how it
Yeah.
was.
And
And
that's
when
that's contra to the conservative the thing, right? Like even if you take it like surface level base meaning, right? Like that's completely against the conservative reading of Lynch.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because literally when she tries to return home at the end, Amanda Palmer freaks out because
Amanda.
because I mean whatever her name is in the but no, I'm just kidding.
Arnold Palmer.
Arnold Palmer. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, but like the return ends and there's just like she's like freaking out because she doesn't like exist in this world. You know what I mean? Like or because they're like who what and it's like what like
Yeah, the
uh
last time you see Sarah, she's like ripping up. I mean, that's very, you know, like indicative of what's happening. She takes a knife and starts cutting the picture of Laura. Right? She's like she's destroying the idea of Laura, right? Which is kind of like what Cooper's doing because Laura, for the longest
Yeah.
time, for Twin Peaks audience, represented this like goodness that was lost in the world because like this evil took it away, right? And it's a very senseless and evil act, right? And then
yeah
Cooper tries to redeem that, and through the redemption of him going back in time to try and erase Twin Peaks, which he can't do, right? He tries to go back in time. I mean, it affects Sarah to where she's trying to erase Laura, and then Laura gets erased, and she has the horrible existential dread of like,
yeah it's like Laura Palmer like she is back in her world but it's a world that she never existed in, right? And it's like it's so it hits at a feeling that is so impossible to like accurately describe in words. You know what I mean? Like the idea that like you would return home and no one would know you. You know?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, she's she doesn't seem to like the life that she's living currently, right? And it's also like, I mean, she has to re-experience the trauma of life. Like, damn,
Yeah.
like she went out, like literally, she went out on her own. Like in Fire Walk with Me, she went out on her own in her own merit, right? Like she didn't seek to be killed, but she also didn't succumb to the evil of Leland, right? Like, and then and she chooses death more so than to be evil, to be Bob, right? And then
Yeah.
um, Cooper's, for lack of a better word, making her re-experience the trauma
Yeah.
of existing in that world, So, but yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that was my final thoughts. Twin Peaks, the entirety of the series. Firewalk with Me is my favorite David Lynch movie. 5 out of 5. Twin Peaks: The Return, 5 out of 5. The original Twin Peaks, up until Leland's discovered as the killer, 5 out of 5.
Yeah.
And then I have a quote from Lucy, the actress who plays Lucy, and she was like, "Yeah, we were all avid watchers of Twin Peaks, but I don't know what happened in season 2. I kept watching it week to week, but I stopped watching it because I was like, who is this lady with James, and why is she trying to kiss him?" Which, yeah, I think the final thing I had to say about Twin Peaks as a whole, and I want you guys' final thoughts too, is yeah, it's like um it's all of it's great. It's my favorite. I think it's like probably the best TV show, like as a whole, right? With the return and everything, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I have to say, like critical about it, is like it's not anyone's fault, but I mean, Donna, James, Audrey, these stories kind of go nowhere, and it's.
Yeah.
I think Audrey's like severely underserved in the entirety of the show as a whole, but like specifically the return. I mean, there's not really much you can do with her, and she just kind of is
Yeah,
non-existent.
there's something weird going on with Audrey because she's just in that one episode,
Yeah.
and then her whole story doesn't really go anywhere or make sense. And then there's the whole thing with her husband, where he says, "Are you going to cooperate, or am I going to have to end your story too?" And it feels to me
Mm-hmm.
like that was kind of David Lynch kind of trying to say something about working with Sherilyn Fenn, because I if he wanted her to be in the show, she would have been in the show, you know? And so he didn't give her a big role, and I feel like maybe that is because of their kind of tense relationship in the past. Uh, but I'm not really sure. It's kind of a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, what are you supposed to do with her? You know, as a character too, there's not much you can do. Um, but yeah, and
Yeah.
that's something. That's why I said, you know, I forgot Donna's character, like actual actress's name, but yeah, she kind of, you know, not to blame everything. It's kind of sexist to blame everything on her, but you know what? We'll blame it on her. She ruined 3 storylines. So
Laura Flynn Boyle.
yeah,
Um.
Or Moira Kelly, I think, is the actress from Fire Walk with Me.
yeah,
Oh,
she's
okay.
fine.
Yeah. Final thoughts. You know, I think The Return is what makes Twin Peaks must watch, right? For me at least, like, cause
Yeah.
it does tell the whole story. It does like expand upon the general mythology, and it just makes you. It's weird, and it makes you feel fucked up. You know, that's like the most I can ask of any art. Is it just makes me feel bad and
It's
weird,
beautifully
but
shot.
good.
Great. It's got great visuals. It's very inventive.
No, it's very like I said, it's like something you can rewatch over and over and like feel differently about every time. And like I said, like the whole like trying to figure out the meaning, because it's like trying to figure out the meaning of a dream where it's like it's pointless, right? Like why did I have a dream of where like I found 6 bags of cocaine in my underwear
I
drawer?
had a
You know what I'm
dream
saying?
that Monica Bellucci
Yeah.
met me in France. That was the
Yeah,
best.
like he just has like the most. He just has the most fucked up dreams, and he happens to be like a video director, or like not a video. What am I saying? Like
Who
you
is
know,
the
he's a movie director. Like he like makes movies. Like he like so he can like create these worlds where like you're like drawn into his mind, right? In his vision.
Yeah. I guess so. Final thoughts for me. Twin Peaks, it's great. Twin Peaks Fire Walk with Me, it's great. The Return,
Great.
the single best TV show of all time. Uh, Maybe Deadwood is up there too.
Oh, Deadwood. Yeah, no,
I've
Deadwood.
never seen Deadwood.
Deadwood's
Oh,
great.
yeah.
Okay, but I don't want to get on here.
Hey, folks, sorry for the awkward ending to the segment, but we got a little cut off. I think we broke our recording bot, but it's the next day. We're all good to go. I want to thank our guest Chase again, aka Thought Haver. Follow him on Twitter. Follow us all on Twitter. I'm sure he'll be back soon with like a fire ass double feature. I had a lot of fun talking Lynch. It was very intimidating. A lot of material. I made a few goof em ups here and there. I'll be honest. What about you? How did you feel?
Yeah, I really enjoyed talking about Lynch. You know, I think of Lynch as a contentious figure, both in the larger filmic scape as well as my own personal um, thoughts on Lynch. Right, and I
Yeah,
think the Twin Peaks discussion really, because Twin Peaks is, you know, like I said, my favorite thing that Lynch has done. It's one of my favorite TV shows, and so I really had a great time talking about, you know, like we said, it was ostensibly a double feature, but also just Twin Peaks as a whole. So yeah, I had a great time. Chase is always a great guest. You know, he's always welcome on, and I look forward to his next time he wants to come on to recommend a double feature that neither of us have heard of.
yeah. Now though, now it's time to look forward to next week. Next week's double feature. It's gonna be a couple of your picks. I don't know yet what you have in mind, but I'm super excited. I'm super stoked. I've watched more movies in the past 2 weeks than I have like all year. Like I'm super like in movie mode. Like I'm all ready. So Matt, what do you got for us next week?
Okay, so next week, I have a double feature, and this is one of the times where most of the time we give you guys the double feature. We say, here's your double feature for next week, and ostensibly you can watch them in order. You can kind of switch around the order, but this coming up week is definitely a double feature. My picks were thematically, I want you to watch them in this order. I think it's got a hidden theme that I will reveal next week. But it's got two themes that I can reveal today, which is it's a Kevin Costner / baseball movie
Okay.
double feature because it is the season, it's baseball season. So,
Yeah.
first off, we're going to do Field of Dreams,
Mm.
and then the second movie we are going to do is Bull Durham. And like I said, this week is really important that you watch them in order. The hidden theme may or may not make sense to you once you watch them, but that's what we're going to discuss next week.
All right, man. Yeah, I'm stoked. Yeah, I've got my MLB like extra innings or whatever. Like I've been watching my games, my Mets. Yeah, it's baseball season. It's spring. It's that time of year. I very much look forward to this. I feel like out of all the sports, baseball has like the most like it has like the like most colorful rogues gallery of like guys. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
there's all kinds of cool guys in baseball, and
and Kevin Costner, he could have been any number. He's done so many baseball movies that I could have picked different ones, but no, I was like, these two, like I said, have the hidden theme and the, like you said, baseball is definitely, I think, is one of the more cinematic sports
yeah, for sure.
that really lends itself, and it's a lot of great writers have tackled baseball, so I'm excited to watch these now. Just for reference, you haven't seen either of these, right?
No, I mean like growing up, I mean Field of Dreams. I remember like there was like a free cable free like Stars weekend one time, and I saw like bits and pieces of it. But like I've never sat down and watched either of these movies all the way through. But I'm stoked, yeah, because like I love baseball. I watch a lot of like documentaries about it more so. Yeah, I mean it's a pretty heavy subject. I like obviously know like Field of Dreams is one of those movies like that we've talked about where it's like it's been parodied so many times that you're like, yeah, I get it, like.
Yeah, Field of Dreams is definitely a movie that,
But
and
I don't.
I'm
I don't actually get it. I'm sure it's much more like interesting and like nuanced than like all of the like parodies or whatever. But that
yeah,
was
for
like
sure.
generally why I haven't seen it.
It's one of those movies that just it's kind of like tail end it here. It's just one of those movies that definitely is in the cultural osmosis for like pull quotes. Definitely is one of the more quoted, especially sports movies. So yeah, I'm looking forward to giving my take. Giving the hidden theme definitely ties into the take of what Field of Dreams is about, and kind of dispelling it as like the meme movie. I think that will be pretty interesting.
Yeah, dude, I look forward to it. Thank you, whoever has listened this far. If you've made it all the way to the podcast at the end, you're our number one fan. You're awesome. We love you. This is your reward. Is me telling you that I love you, and hopefully you come back. So thank you guys for joining us. Matt, as always, thank you. We'll be DMing each other all week.
Yeah.
Yeah, and watching many movies.
Cool. Thanks, guys.